All right, here we go. What's happening? This is Djordje, your friendly neighborhood bull fiddle cat. I'm still in Croatia. I'm not back to Slapsville yet. It's going to be another couple weeks here. And I noticed, all right, already have 20 people. All right, we have more people than usual. And my first question is like, do you hear me? So I see a few comments here. So please, guys, let me know if you hear me fine. And once I introduce my guest, I'll ask you the same thing. Today, we have a bass player from the Hillbilly Moon Explosion, um, Oliver Baroni. If you're not familiar with the band, and you should, it's literally the most viewed rockabilly band on YouTube. You Google anyone, you Google Stray Cats, you Google Reverend Horton Heat or Tiger Army or Living End, and you nobody has more views than the Hillbilly Moon Explosion. That's and that's for their song "My Love Forevermore" with Sparky. We're gonna be definitely talking with Oliver, who is besides being a bass player, he's also sometimes singer, but he's also the band leader. So I'm pretty sure he's quite responsible um, for for that success as well. So we're gonna be talking about that and anything else you guys are interested. Please write down in the comments in the live chat. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Oliver Baroni and to add him to the stream right now. Hey,
Hi there.
Oliver,
Hey there, George.
how's it
I said
going?
George. Georgia. Sorry. Georgia.
Yeah,
Get it right.
yeah. I know you're perfect, like in pronouncing my first name and last name, and then he's George. Like, oh,
It's
what's
such a
going
cool
on?
name. Stijepovic. I mean, hey, what's your name? George Stijepovic. Move back. It's a great name. Excellent. Hey,
All right, I
thanks so
should not
much.
change it then.
Thanks so much
You're
for having
welcome.
me here. I'm kind of nervous.
Are you really?
Yeah, because I mean, because you're obviously, an absolute amateur on the bass, whereas I am.
But I'm
No,
trying.
seriously, this is about bass playing mainly, and I'm not really that much of a bass player. I kind of just do enough that it fits in with the music, and that's why I guess I'm a bit nervous. But hey, I'll just have another drink and then I'll be fine.
I have a margarita here ready, so
Excellent.
I don't get nervous.
Well, I
Um,
checked. We still have. I've got myself the leftover. We still have a couple of whiskey bottles from whichever the last tour was. Our last
oh
tour.
really?
Remember the days when we still had tours?
You know,
Wow, feels like
I
that was
feel
the
like that
70s,
was a
wasn't
dream. You know,
it? Yeah, it was the 1970s.
yeah, I feel that was a dream. Like I wonder if that lifestyle ever existed. You know, it's just like, nah, I don't. I'm gonna get depressed like talking about it. But how have you been? How are you doing during the lockdown? What is the situation right now in Switzerland? Are you guys in total
Um,
lockdown? Is it a little better? Are you
no,
opening it up?
it's pretty much open, and I think like a lot of places in Europe, it's open, and they've already gotten nervous that they might have opened up a bit too much. So I think they've started. It's become mandatory to wear your masks in public transport. Um, but the shops don't have to wear them. Pretty much everything is. I mean, even the clubs were open for one weekend, and then they had a super spreader event because, duh, of course. And now I don't even know what the thing is. You see, we actually even have two gigs in Switzerland scheduled.
Oh
Now,
wow!
one is actually one is something rather cute, which is something we do every 2 years, and it's down just the local community center. And every 2 years we do that. It's open air, it's out in the open, and it's the most unrock and roll gig you can imagine. It's kids and grannies and everyone just comes by, and it's very laid back. And one of the reasons I like doing that gig is because in that very community center is where I first started playing rock and roll. I had my first practice room there. In fact, actually, that okay, can you see it? That blood spattered bass guitar
I
up
do,
there.
yeah.
That was my first bass, and as you can see, it's hang on, yeah, it's broken because I did a Paul Simonon on that. So yeah.
Oh, and that's what I was about to ask you.
Okay, now I've screwed up the camera. Is this kind of what
No,
we need
it's
to
all
see?
good. It's all good. Like, all right, all of you that are watching us, please let us know if something goes wrong, if you cannot hear us, if you cannot see us, or anything. So, just like to make sure that we're on
Yeah.
board here.
So as I was saying, I mean, it's kind of, I mean, that gig probably will happen because I'm guessing, um, since it's out in the open, they don't have the distancing won't be a problem. And then
Oh,
there's another gig in a club where it's unsure. I mean, I don't know how. I don't think it's a huge club, so theoretically they might fall within the amount that's permitted. I don't know. I don't really
well, good
know.
luck.
The Spanish tour was postponed. The that one Finnish gig that we had was postponed. The Greek gigs were postponed.
Oh,
It's
the
I mean
Greek gig as well. I thought I saw your post that the Greek gig gonna happen. So that one gonna be postponed as well, huh?
scheduled. I mean, but they were supposed to happen in May.
Oh, okay, okay.
And there was a Japanese tour, the Japanese tour that was also had to be postponed by a year. I mean, hello.
Yeah, yeah, I see you. I see you and I hear you.
I don't know if you're frozen or not. You seem to be. No, you know you're moving. That's good. Okay, can you hear me,
I'm just focused. I hear you perfectly.
George?
All right, it seems that Oliver.
Okay, right. Yeah.
Okay.
Ah, see, you're multitasking. You're reading comments and stuff.
Yes.
Greetings from
Emanuela
Finland.
actually,
Hi, Finland.
Emanuela
Yeah, we're not coming,
just posted.
unfortunately.
She said that Greece should be in September. So
It's
thank you,
been
Emanuela.
um, it's been the same. I think it's more of the same for most of us.
Well, it is what it is. Like all my gigs have been postponed,
Anyway,
and I'm not going to be
I'm
able
back.
to play for a long time. But it is what it is. We will survive. We have a slap stream at least. So all right, there's more and more people. 42 people so far. All right. At the end, there's like literally,
Yes, everything's cool.
literally
I can hear you.
about I don't know, like over a
Something's
thousand
wrong. I
people.
hear
Over
a
a thousand
British guy with
people
a Swiss
saw
accent.
the over a
My
thousand
accent
people
probably is
saw
a
the
bit
first
Swiss
episode.
because I've been here so long.
It seems that Oliver's camera is lagging out, like as Aaron mentioned. Let me add him again. So hopefully it's gonna be better. Uh, so okay. All right. So as I mentioned, like if you started, you were born in London, right? But you spent your whole life in Switzerland, in Zurich, and
Oh, is my
you
camera lagging out?
told me you told me that your first instrument was recorder, and then that you switched uh, to bass guitar, and I guess upright bass a little bit later on, like when you were 15 or so. So um, so I guess this is happening on Oliver's end. Okay. Hopefully it's not going to happen too many times. But anyway, so I'm going to repeat. So um, I wanted to talk to Oliver about his beginnings, how he started on recorder in school, and then he he moved to the bass and started. Okay, thank you, Aaron. Um, I'll remove this branding that I have that was actually made by Fernando Slap from Argentina. He's great, and thanks to him, all this looks cool and great. All right, Oliver is back. All right, this is what you get when you since you're using Wi-Fi, man.
I'm
But
sorry, I don't have Ethernet. Um,
all right, we'll survive. We'll survive. So I was talking a little bit about your beginnings. You started on recorder, and then when did you switch to bass?
well, I switched from recorder to bass. No, I mean that the recorder was the first instrument I know. First grade, you learn it in school. I
Oh,
actually
that was
carried
it.
on record. Well, no, I actually carried on recorder up until I think 10 or 11. I remember I was even part of a recorder ensemble, and the last one I played. So recorders you get in all sizes. The last one I actually played was the C bass, because there's the
All
bass
right.
recorder, and then there's the C bass. That's the one where you need a little necklace, and then there's even the sub bass, and that one just stands on the floor and it's got this big pipe coming out. And I remember we did this arrangement of the Pink Panther theme for a recorder ensemble, and the bass of the Pink Panther theme. The thing is, a recorder is a very inefficient instrument to produce low frequencies. You've got hang on, now I can finally see the whole camera. Here we go. All right, then. You've got the lower you go, the less the less efficient the airstream can travel. And so the Pink Panther bass line was doo 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 doo, and the low note would always be doo 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 doo. It kind of sucked. But anyway, that was just on the side. And I then, when I was 7, I started piano, and I took piano lessons right up until I was about, I don't know, 18 or something, I guess. Classical and also jazz and arrangement and all that, stuff. And then when I was 15, I wanted to start a rock and roll garage trash psychobilly band. I picked up a bass, and I just thought, well, a bass has 4 strings, a piano has 88, so a bass is easy. And I just kind of taught myself, which is why I'm not a bass player. I never had any form of formal training on this instrument. I think if you, Georgia, if you look at my fretting hand, you'll be absolutely ridiculous because I never learned anything. I just yeah, I taught myself. So I probably have really bad technique. Where's George gone? There he is.
Well, you learned how to make rockabilly popular again. That's
I mean,
more than most of us
when I
achieved.
when I first when I first picked up the bass, I wasn't sure how to make that slapping sound. And actually, to be honest, so I kind of got into slap bass because of the Stray Cats and Stray Cat Strut. And I remember seeing that video, but this was the 1980s, so you were lucky to actually have the TV on at that very time that that video was played. And I remember as a kid, I was more excited about the drummer playing on the garbage cans than actually looking at the bass player. And then afterwards, when I got my first cassettes, because that's what I got first, I first thought that sound was, I thought it was something else. I thought it was, probably, the rim of the snare as usual, stuff like that. And I didn't realize that it was coming from the bass. And then later on, a friend said, no, no, that's the bass. And then since I didn't have any videos or anything, and I was already in Zurich then, and I didn't have any clubs. The club foot was going in London, and I was probably young enough to go there because that was a really young crowd. But I had no place that I could go and kind of check out how it was done properly. And so I kind of figured it out myself, which is probably another reason my technique is a bit shit. You know.
I mean, we all kind of figure it out, like by ourselves. It's like the classical and jazz lessons kind of helped me out as well. But as far as slap, just, I grew up in Serbia. There was nobody like there was one guy that I really enjoyed watching, and he was cool, but I couldn't. There was nobody else, so I based all my ideas and techniques on him, and then I tried to copy his licks, and then whatever I was
Is
imagining
there
that
no
we rockers sounded like.
is there no slap is there no slap bass in Serbian folk music? Because I know that in Hungarian folk music, you sometimes get the slap bass,
Romanian.
and Romania too. That's one with the three-string bass, right? Yeah,
Yes,
but not in
it in
Serbian. Okay.
Hungary it's a little tricky, but in Hungary, basically, I mean, in Romania as well. It's Romani people play slap,
Yeah,
gypsies
yeah,
they play
yeah,
slap, and in Hungary it's basically just that border with Romania. So those are the guys that actually use slap, and
right.
usually
Okay.
in traditional Hungarian music you use bow. So it's kind of like a long notes like rum 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 where for
Right.
Hungarian traditional music, but there's a little bit of slapping once in a while. But I talked like to a few ethnomusicologists from Hungary, and then I found just
Mhm.
like a few really few recordings, old ones, that you can kind of refer to, like all right, so slap kind of existed here, but it's
Mm.
mostly Romania. There's tiny bit in Serbia as well, but another again, I found
Is this
only
stuff
a
that
couple
you've
of
played?
recordings.
Because is this stuff that you've played? Because play you've played folk music and stuff, Balkan stuff, no?
Yes,
Or
I
right?
play
And
lots of I play lots of Balkan music, and I used to play in a band, Fish Tank Ensemble, in the States. We toured
right,
all
yeah.
over. We toured all over Europe, Canada, but it was gypsy music, Romani music. Romani is the term that I'm going to be using for
Yeah.
all the viewers. So that's more of a proper way to say it.
Hmm.
But whenever I say that, I'm thinking about gypsy music. So we toured a lot, and we played all kinds of Romani music. So we played a little bit of flamenco. We played a little bit of
Hmm.
hot jazz, gypsy jazz, Django style, and then we played quite a bit of Balkan music. Bulgarian, Serbian, Romanian, and I played lots of slap. I love playing slap in odd time signatures like 7, 9, 11, 13.
Right.
I think it sounds really really cool. I don't have a bait. As I mentioned, I'm still in Croatia. This is my Croatian vacation, and
Croatian
you might
vacation.
even yeah, you might even see
I'm
a
a poet and
seaside
I know
in
it.
the back. Yes.
Look at that! Look at that! It's
Yeah,
beautiful
and
weather out
it's
there. Absolutely rubbish.
it
Yeah.
is, yeah. Well, I'll have to eventually move since it's probably going to get dark and I have no light here, so I'll probably have to move
But you
inside.
have Ethernet,
But we'll
whereas
see.
I don't. Okay.
I do.
Fingers crossed for the
Yeah.
Wi-Fi.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. So
yeah,
that's
so
kind of
it's
how I
great.
learned
Like
it.
for traditional music, it's great. But I didn't get a hold of that traditional Balkan music un- until I was already, I don't know, 17 or 18, 19 when I joined the band Balkan Music Club, and we played also Balkan music. But
Mm.
this episode is about you. So tell me, so is
Well, I'm
that where when you switched to bass, you immediately started Hillbilly Headhunters, or that was later?
I guess that was the. I mean, that was like the teenage little. That was the teenage psychobilly band that came out of it. Initially, we started. The idea was that I would sometimes play piano, and we had a double bass, a bass guitar player for stuff which were a bit more like the Sonics, and because we wanted to do lots of like 60s garage trash too. The that guy actually we had a problem with the bass players, and so I just decided to then play bass guitar and the double bass, and just kicked out the whole idea of doing keyboards too. And it took a while to get a halfway decent guitar player. I mean, that's a bit of a problem if you're into this sort of music. At least back in the day, you would listen to Stray Cats or I don't know the Jets or something, and no guitar player could play decently, at least not where I lived. I mean, they all. I mean, back in the '80s, it wasn't a guitar-driven era. It was all about synths and big hair and drums that didn't sound like drums and guitar,
And
so it
that
didn't
sorry,
sound
and
like
that was in
guitar.
Zurich or London?
This was already in Zurich. I already
Okay.
came to Zurich around, yeah.
How old were you when you
So
moved
it was
from
really
moved out
difficult
of
to
London?
find. Sorry,
How old
it
were
was
you
really.
when you moved out of London?
I was 8, 7, 8, something like
Ah,
that.
okay, so you were a
Yeah.
kid. Okay.
I went to. They put me in an international school, so I didn't really learn German until I was a teenager. So that's why even in Swiss German, I've got a bit of an English accent. But when I speak English, I've got a bit of a Swiss accent. So hey, you know,
So
the
you're
worst
always
of both
exotic.
worlds. The worst of both worlds. Yeah, so it was difficult to get a guitar player because I mean the first guitar players that we tried out, they were just so shit, and and yeah. So we just as you do as a teenager, you just kind of figure it out, and listening back to that stuff, I mean it's bloody awful. I can hardly listen to it. I'm really sort of very embarrassed about most of that stuff. Um, but it was a bit more double bass driven, and I was a bit more into the instrument as such because I was listening to a lot of psychobilly at the time, and this was when psychobilly was still sort of that very eclectic, very British style. I think
So there was
with
still the 80s?
yeah, I mean, I think when it became more of a Californian thing, the style, I mean, the Californian vibe somehow brought in a whole different sound to it. There was somehow there's if you listen to Californian bands, the band that you play in at the moment, there's these cool melodies that seem to come from that
Mhm.
sort of Californian punk thing, which all somewhere probably goes the way back to surf music, and there's it's got that sort of it harks back to a different tradition than the British one did, which was drawing on different influences. And so you would have bands which were you'd have stuff like Frenzy, which was this weird sort of prog rock, psychedelic sometimes, in a hybrid thing. And then you would have Restless, which was kind of straight on rockabilly, and then King Kurt, which was fun punk, and the Tall Boys, which were slightly more dark and scary, and then of course Demented came in and kind of changed everything. But it was this weird mix of things, and so I was listening to that, and I guess it was seeing and hearing Steve Whitehouse from Frenzy for the first time that sort of changed it for me. I mean, and to this day, I guess he's the most important influence for me as a bass player, at least. I remember the first time I heard a Frenzy song, I was at a record store and I went with the LP to the listening booth because he had listening booths and gave the salesperson the LP and said, "Okay, like to listen to this LP," and that was called Psycho Attack Over Europe Part 2. It was on that Dutch label Kicks for You, and they'd released these two samplers called Psycho Attack, and it showed these bombers, and they were raining down double basses. And the guy happened to put on the B side, and it started out with a song called Nobody's Business by Frenzy. And I was listening to that, and then I said to the guy, "Sorry, this is an LP. You've set it to 45 RPM. It should be 33." And the guy checks and says, "No, no, it's 33." And I was like, "Bloody hell, this guy is fast. How does he do that?" And then soon after that, I actually got to see Frenzy because they were on tour in Europe and actually came by, and then I was like, "Whoa, okay." And it's also probably because of Steve that I ended up playing steel strings and the whole mag pickup thing. Um, it was Steve and Bob Cotton from the Jets and Lee Rocker, obviously. They all played steel strings, they all had mag pickups, and that's why I always went for that setup and never looked back really.
I used steel strings as well, mag and piezo as well, and I remember hearing Frenzy as well, and I really remember those records that you mentioned. It's funny, I was a kid in Serbia, and you couldn't find any records like that,
Yeah.
especially psychobilly. But the first one for me was Cats Keep Rocking, I think Volume 2. it started. The first song was Demented Argo, Sharp Knife or One Sharp Knife, something like that. I remember that I
Oh
loved that
yeah,
compilation.
I
I
think
think
I
I think
remember.
that one came out like before like Psycho Attack or something like that. I remember that was
I mean, there
really a
was
kid. I was
that was
11 or
obviously
something.
that was probably the way that music sort of came into my life. So on this one summer camp I went to, this friend of mine from England had a cassette of Rockabilly Psychosis and the Garage Disease, which was that compilation that came out on Big Beat Records. And being an ethnomusicologist myself, I really liked the fact that the A side was kind of the roots of this genre. So the A side had the Phantom Love Me, it had the Sonics, the song Psycho, it had Surfing Bird, it had all those sort of 1950s, 1960s, the roots of psychobilly, and the B side was the then contemporary acts. So this was 1984 and 85, so it had the Meteors, it had the Cramps, it had one of the very first Guana Bats recordings where they still had bass guitar. It also had stuff that you haven't heard of since, like Grant and Geezers, and also the Gun Club. You see, that's another thing. Like the Gun Club was kind of in with that same sort of scene at the beginning. And if you listen to another compilation, the one that's called Blood on the Cats, that one
Hmm.
too, that's one that has that sort of splatter cover, which was probably the that bass guitar up there. That was
Uh-huh.
the probably the inspiration for that. Um, there too. I mean, it's very eclectic. I didn't like all of the stuff, but I like the fact that it was such a broad genre. And then, like with all music, as soon as it gets defined, it actually becomes a bit more narrow, which is kind of a shame sometimes.
It was really creative. Psychobilly was really creative in the 80s. That was kind of like amazing and exciting. It kind of became not that exciting anymore. But there's always bands here and there that are kind of different. They're doing their own unique thing. So the Psychobilly and the Stray Cats were the first influences on you as far as slap bass goes.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, figuring out Stray Cat Strut, Runaway Boys. I had that descending line wrong for about the first, I don't know, month or so, and then I listened again and said, "Oh no, he's right. He lands on the F. I get it. Oh,
Yeah.
and yeah, I and the usual teething troubles. You start off with someone's bass who you've loaned, and of course it doesn't have the proper strings on it, and you start off with steel strings, which are probably classical strings, which are way too hard and way too tense, and you end up ripping out your fingers and everything. And
So, but are you still using steel strings or not?
I'm now using. Should we talk? Should we be nerdy now? Right. I'm now using what are they called? Eurosonics? No, they're called.
Eurosonics?
Well, they're steel. They're steel. They're steel, but they're nylon coated. What are they called? They're called Presto Superlights. That's right.
Hmm.
Prestos. Um, let's see if you can see the bass enough. I wonder if I'm gonna. What about this? No, now you can't see my head. That's silly. See, I'm very professional. I'm doing this with my laptop, you see, an all professional. All right. It's yeah, they're steel strings, so I can still use my mag pickup, and I just started using them because I got fed up ripping up my fingers because I always found that to keep the calluses going that you need for steel strings. I mean, you probably will notice this now when you come back from Croatia, no?
Um,
If you haven't played for 3 4 weeks, you lose your calluses on your slapping hand, no?
when I was a kid, that was happening to me. Right now, it it does not happen to me. I don't know why, but I don't have calluses, but I can still play, and I um, don't have problems. So, but I would probably have problem if I had to play,
I have problems
like a couple
all the
hours
bloody
show or
time.
something.
I had problems all
But
the time, and what I mean, the way to go was basically to play until you get blisters, and then wait until the blisters harden. Then you play again until you get blisters. You wait until the blisters harden. You do that three, four
Exactly.
times, and by the third time, you've got your calluses, and then you're good. Which
Yeah.
means before a tour came up, I would have to play a lot and whatever. It never really works because you can practice as much as you want. Even if you practice 10 hours a day, it's not worth as much as half a bloody hour on stage. As soon as you play a live gig, you just rip up your fingers the first night, and then the second night you have to use plasters, and that's shit to play. And I just got a bit fed up with it, and I realized that it's not about tension. So we're just talking about blisters for fingers. It's not so much the tension, because I know there was this quest for zero tension, especially in the psychobilly scene. I mean, there's some basses that I sort of try out backstage at these bands. It's like, wow, what are these rubber bands?
Yeah.
It's
Like
not about
spaghetti
tension
strings.
as much as texture. And with steel, of course, with steel, you don't really have a grip. And you're always trying to grip, and that's what's doing it. And with this sort of nylon coating, you're I don't get any blisters anymore. It seems to work. And a big change is that I only realized this when I strung this up with steel strings again for the last gig of a tour. I decided I'll play steel strings again. But I've started playing like this a lot. I don't know if you can see that. Sort of, I'll play. So basically holding it sort of what I call not so upright bass. And I'll play whole songs like that. And that started with these actual strings. And when I stringed this bass up with steels again, I suddenly realized I can't really do that well. The type of string you have dictates how you actually hold your bass, I realized. And with these, I just move it around a lot. And I play lots of the set. I've realized now I've started to go like this, which is weird. I don't think anyone else does that. I'm sure it's not a good way to play it. I don't know. So yeah.
I like playing like that, but I just want to look like Paul Simonon. So that's my thing when I do
Well,
it. But I
okay.
always use steel strings.
But the wanting to look like, I mean, that's, we all say that as a joke. But the thing is, wanting to look like someone because rock and roll is not just about what you play, it's also about the feeling. And so if you want to look like Paul Simon, it means you kind of want to play from your hip, and you kind of want to feel the song from your hip. And by doing that, the song will end up sounding different. And if that's what you want, if you want the song to sound a bit more, I don't know, earthy. It's very difficult to find the correct terminology for this stuff. If you want it to sound a bit more, ballsy and earthy, you might end up doing it that way because it's, somehow to go. Feels better down there than if you'd have your bass guitar up here.
And drop my laptop. I'm professional as well.
Drop your laptop. You're
Yeah,
professional
absolutely.
too.
Yeah. Well, I have my setup in a Slapsville. I don't have it here. Um, and which steel strings were you using when you were doing that?
Tomastic, the lightest ones.
Spirocores?
Yeah, I guess the purple ended ones, I think, and towards the end, I took the solo ones, which I tuned to normal. I
Oh,
never
okay.
did the bumping down thing one. I've never tried that. I know there's a
Yeah,
lot of
me
people do
neither.
that. I know
That
that
looks
Grisha
scary.
from Demented does that, and he always laughs at me. He says, "Come on, try my bass, Oliver." I call them pussy strings because he's got really soft strings, and I think the two low ones are steels, but he's bumped them
Mhm.
down, so you're actually playing an A down here.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if that would work for me, but it works for lots of people. So I mean,
Well,
especially
it
on the
sounds
psychobilly scene.
good. I mean, the thing is, I've always wanted something which is really simple. I I mean, I've got two Bartolinis. This is a bit. It's basically their Bartolini um, P bass pickups.
Hmm.
That and this is sort of a custom made thing, and so it's just that, and it's just the volume knob, and that's all it is. Ignore this up here. This is just a slap, but basically it's a pickup that goes into an amplifier, so it's like a bass guitar. And
Okay, so how did you make that? Can you show that like closer? Like how did you make that custom
okay,
stand
let's
for
see.
the magnetic pickup?
Okay, let's see. I had it made because I can't make this stuff myself. Let's see. Can you see it like this? Haha. Right, here we go. So this here is, ignore this up here for the moment. This is basically just a sort of metal housing. You can adjust it there. There's some screws that you can adjust so you can get the angle right, and you can also adjust the height of these pickups so that you get the where you want them on the strings. But basically, it's just two Bartolini precision bass pickups, and here's your volume knob. And the good thing about having magnetic pickups is you can play on the low E, and it sounds good. And now I have to go and have to explain what all this mess is up here. All this is a far too large preamp that I use for the slap. So the slap's got a bug mic on the back of the fretboard like everyone else, and it comes out here, goes into this preamp because I just want to be able to adjust the volume on my own. And it goes into this preamp, and this is just a preamp that I happen to have lying around, which is why it's completely overqualified because it's got a bass knob and a treble knob and a volume knob. Uh, I don't know, it looks cool, but I basically only need the volume knob on it. And here's the cable that then goes out for the slap. And so I go out with two completely separate signals. The bass goes to the bass amp, and the slap goes via DI into the board. And so when I play live, I've got the slap coming out my front wedges, and the bass coming from behind from my amplifier. Does
Oh,
that
are you
explain
traveling
it?
with
Does
your
that
own
make sense?
soundman?
Beg your pardon?
Are you traveling with your own soundman? He knows all that.
Yes. Yes.
Ah, okay. It would be
I
tricky
mean,
to have just a house sound guy.
well, so here's the thing. I mean, this was kind of set up so I don't really need to rely on a sound man. And if I feel the slap isn't loud enough, I can just turn it up. But obviously, with my own sound man, he just knows how to set it up. But the idea is, okay, hang on a second. The idea was to have a foolproof system where you can just plug in, and with the magnetic pickup, you never have to worry about stage volume and stuff like that. You can go as loud as you want. You can play on a big stage, you can play on a small stage. It's always going to be okay. And yeah, some people are going to say, yeah, but it doesn't sound like a double bass. No, it doesn't sound like an acoustic double bass. So here's the bass acoustically. Hang on, I've got the slap in there. So here's acoustic. This is nothing, and I'll dial in a bit of the bass. I don't have much, but I'll dial in a bit of the bass here, and this is obviously the bass sound. I don't know if you can hear that, is going to be a bit more bassy and maybe even slightly like a bass guitar. But I say, as soon as you put a pickup on the double bass, it's not going to sound like an acoustic double bass. You want the acoustic sound? Yeah, just put a microphone in front of it. And that's what you do in the studio. But live amplification is always going to be a sound compromise. And one of the factors within that compromise is just practicality. And that's what I went for the beginning. So I just wanted something I can plug into. I've had mates come down here from bands that actually tour, and they've got these complicated systems with piezo, and then there's this little preamp on it, and there's about 12 buttons and knobs on that preamp, and after you've spent sort of 2 hours twiddling all those knobs and whatever, you end up with a really good sound. But I can just plug into any bloody amp and everyone will be able to hear me. I can hear myself, and the sound guy has got something that he can work with. He can tweak it, he can make it better or worse, but he's got something that he can work with, and we're ready to go. So that's also the reason why we stopped Emanuela playing acoustic guitar. We just went, okay, two electric guitars, screw it. It's just easier to work with.
Yeah, I mean, I have a magnetic pickup on my bass, and I'm happy with it,
Mm.
especially if I play, a bigger place like a small stadium or arena. You
Sure.
can't really do it with a piezo. I do have a piezo on the bass as well, and I can combine it. So like if I play a jazz gig in a smaller place, I use
Hmm.
more of a piezo, and then if I play arena gig, then I use more of a magnetic pickup. I think it's also matters like what kind of places you play, what kind of sound you're going for. I like magnetics because it gives you the option to have kind of that little bit of that bass guitar sound, but it's just gives you a little more power, I would say. Like if you want to slide, if you when you slide with magnetic pickup, it's like boom. If you slide with
Yeah.
piezo, it's just whoop, and it's gone. Yeah,
Yeah.
so at least for that, But when I play with the bow, magnetic is obviously
But also, if you play, I mean,
useful.
I play lots of runs on the low E, so it's going to be, and with lots of piezo things, it's going to be conka, conka, conka. Or if you want the low frequencies, you're always going to have feedback, and so there's always this weird messing around. And I think a lot of my bass lines are the way they are because I was able to use the full range, and that's why I remember seeing lots of 1950s style rockabilly bands, and they would always play up here. In fact, they would always use the top two strings and just go up and down there, more or less. And that's probably more authentic, maybe. But I did lots of licks that all went all the way down to the low E because simply because I could. And Lee Rocker, I mean, there again, I mean, he had that's pretty low, it goes down to the low E. So
A question about magnetics. Like I remember when I was using that type of system with basically P bass pickups, I never was able to make the same volume for each string. So it was always like one string was a little bit louder, one string was a little bit lower. How are you using any compressor or something, or like
no, I mean
how
there too. I mean, I just go into an amp. I don't want any preamps. I don't want any compressors or anything like that. And I've recently changed. So I've recently got myself some posh Green Boy audio speakers here, which for the first time in 20, I forget, more than 20 years I've actually bought a new set of speakers. Up until then, I used that small thing for the small gigs, which is just a Music Man 130-watt head. I don't even know if it's for bass. And an Ashdown 2x10. And for the big gigs, I use this beast here, which there's an 18-inch speaker over there. And this is the Mesa Boogie full range. And that's the Mesa Boogie bass 400 plus, the full, weighs 300 kilos. And it's got 12 6L6s in the back. And it sounds awesome, but it's really for the big gigs, and I love that full tube sound. It sounds fuller than an Ampeg, so I really really like that one. But it's so heavy, and I we don't travel with our own roadie, and yeah, and so I've decided to try the whole D class amp system. And I got this cheap one here. This is a new Fender one, and I kind of like the sound because I've got everything set to 12 o'clock. And I like the sound, but I've done back in January. I did the first sort of tour with it, and it was, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sold on the whole D class amplifier system. And I think I've just grown used to having tube amps, and tube amps compress on their own in a very nice analog way. And that, to get back to your question about getting each string as loud as each other, having a tube amp sort of relativizes that problem a lot because it compresses on its own anyway. And I've just grown used to that, and so I'm not very happy with this Fender thing. It's really cheap. That's why I got it. I just thought, okay, I'll try it out. And but I'm still searching. Uh, yeah.
We all do. Like I've been using Orange amps actually for last 5 years or so. I've been pretty happy with them. But I
Is that D
just
class?
sorry,
Is that class D? Sorry, it's called class
Uh,
D, isn't it? Not
I'm
D
not
class.
sure. I know that the one that I use is a 500 500 stroke 500. It's a good amp. I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm really happy with it. But I'm not sure like about classes. I'm really not a big gearhead. I'm the worst. Like
Yeah, I
talking
don't
about
have any
that.
pedals. I don't have any compressors. I don't really know how to use a compressor. I mean, that's something which is a bit embarrassing because I mean, I also produce a lot of stuff. I've produced um, kind of half of the Hillbilly Moon albums, but I don't really know how to work compression. I rely on good sound engineers. Hey
And
there. So
musicality of the
Manuela's
musician.
just walked in.
All right, welcome, Emanuela.
Oh, cheers. Yeah. And I've got a Coke. So
All right,
you said
she brought
if
you
I
some
could
drinks.
if I could play a song or sing a song, and the thing is, I can't. I'm shit at singing, like I told you beforehand. And so I got. So Emanuela, are you in the picture here?
Hello.
She will be.
George.
Hello,
Hi,
welcome.
George.
So I
Hi.
got a proper singer, but she only learned the actual chords to this song yesterday because this is a song where she usually doesn't play
I
guitar.
don't play yet. So
You've been for a beer in that case, or what?
now we had dinner,
Oh,
and Tallulah discovered tzatziki,
ah, that's good.
and yeah, and I had a beer, of course.
So you can't see George. Can you
Oop,
put yourself in the picture again?
he disappeared now.
I
Yeah.
Hi.
So
am.
this is
If I'm
George.
here, she's not in the picture. I would prefer if she's on the picture.
Yeah, just so you can say hi.
Hello.
I don't know. Did you meet him in Long Beach? The what was it? The Long Beach gig, which was a year or two ago.
Alex's bar.
Alex's
Alex's
Bar,
bar.
Long Beach. That's right.
I
I
was
don't know. Did
talking
you
to
meet him?
you.
I spoke to him.
Yes, we said hello. Just a quick hello.
Yeah.
So I have to do something here. Shall I go? Wanneer naar gaat het hier worden?
I don't know. So here's where you can tell us where to sit if we have to move to the left, the right, or
All
anything.
right. So you're gonna be like this.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, that's probably cool.
it's excellent.
I'm wondering how much amp I should dial in. Probably none.
Well, your bass sounds great.
I am super rusty. I haven't
We
played
all
bass.
are. We all are,
No,
man.
seriously, it was so depressing. So yesterday I rehearsed this song with Emanuela very briefly, and it was so depressing. It was awful the way I'm playing it. It's not at all groovy at all. It sounds like. So please, everyone, bear with me. Just listen to the singer. At least she knows
No,
what she's
no.
doing. She knows.
Listen to my guitar.
We're doing The Long Way Down. This is a song I wrote 2006, and we then ended up recording. Actually, it's kind of fitting that it's just us two now because that was this. We did an album in 2006 with a producer called Mark Neal. He's a guy. He's back then he lived in San Diego, and now I think he's back in Georgia, and he's done the Black Keys and J.D. McPherson, and I think he's currently doing the Delta Bombers. Great guy, terrific producer. Only works with old school Studer 8-track machines, and we just went over, the two of us, and had people like Eddie Angel and Craig Packham on drums, and stuff like that. And so this is kind of the way it was back then because it was just us two. And it's a song called The Long Way Down. And instead of the guitar solo, I'll just mess around on the bass.
Right.
Okay, Djordje?
Perfect.
You're still here, aren't
He's
you?
still here, right.
Yes.
1, 2, and 1, 2, 3, 4.
When I was young, you were the top of the top. You used to love me, didn't want me around. You were a hero, couldn't buy me alone. You said you wanna make it on your own. Nothing has changed, it's the same as yesterday. It's a long way from here to the start. It's a long way down. Graduation day, you're ready to fly.
Timing.
You're going to places, need to say goodbye. Just when I show you, I'm doing nothing. Don't you love me? Treat me like a queen. Nothing has changed, it's the same as yesterday. It's a long way from here to the start. No one love ever getting you. Long way, so don't look around. It's a long way down.
Okay. Nonsense. Oh.
Back where we began, on top of the top. You got you are ever get all the way down. Nothing has changed, it's the same as yesterday. It's a long way from here to the start. You want that love ever keeping you away. Long way, so don't look around. It's a long way down. I'm very sorry.
I was speeding up all the time, wasn't I?
I don't know.
Oh.
I have problems with the.
Was it bad? How bad was it? What's the damage?
It was great. Come on.
Oh,
You
well.
see that everybody loves it. Everybody
Really?
loves it. You got the hearts. I'm gonna
That's
feature it
Aaron. I
again.
know Aaron. Hey man, how you doing, Aaron?
You got the hearts from Christelle. You got great fucking song from Aaron. You had good choice from Carlos, from Carolyn, Lucky Us. Carlos, great song. Those are just a few.
I just noticed. I don't know if you guys noticed it, but I noticed during playing how rusty I am in the sense that it doesn't feel as easy as usual. I mean, the thing, but usually if Duncan does that, his solo, there's a bit towards the end of the solo where we'll both do this sort of triplet sort of thing where it's. And now I just found that sort of really, whoa, a lot of work. And it's something that, I guess if you're doing a gig, of course, you've got the adrenaline, you've got people in front of you, so it's easier to do anyway. This, as soon as you take drums away and you take a couple of people in the room away, it becomes more difficult. Which is why I'm always amazed at your slapping videos where you do famous songs all on your own. Because I always found the fewer musicians, the harder work it is for the bass player. And if you're on your own, then it's So that's the only song we've kind of got
Yeah.
for these
Yeah,
Somehow.
that's
next.
that series that I did, like slap bass Sundays, were tough, like doing like by myself. It
Sure.
took me a bit like to just drag a bass to a location in Los Angeles, have a little story and all that, just play all these melodies with slap. It's kind of
Yeah, but
pain.
you played in front of the
And
Capitol building and all of that. That was pretty cool.
I did. I'm glad you enjoyed it. All right, if you guys are not familiar with this, that series is called Slap Bass Sundays, and it's here on my channel. So check it out. That's a playlist. Um, how do you guys feel? Do you want to? Any chance you can do one more? The possible?
Um, Actually,
No? Yes?
I have to leave. I have somebody
You have
waiting.
to leave. Oh, okay. But I
But
appreciate you.
next time,
Next
Next
time
time.
we'll
All right.
actually get our shit together and actually maybe you see. So I also asked Duncan if he could come around, but Duncan's he's out and about. He can't make it. So maybe we'll do something like this
Well,
again.
uh,
We not the
Duncan
most.
has a question for you. Duncan asked you, is the gig in
Duncan,
September? You see?
that's a different Duncan, isn't it?
really?
I
Very
don't know.
much
Some
doubt
Dunk.
that Duncan
I know.
is.
What is the question here?
If we have a gig in September, which gig in September?
Yes, we do.
About Greek gig.
We have 3 gigs in Switzerland, and I hope the 2 in Greece.
We have the ones in Greece
We
so
should
far.
do them, but maybe we have to postpone them again. But
Hmm.
it's not out yet. They will decide in August 18th. Yeah.
Okay. Well, just stay tuned. We'll find out. Hey, thanks a lot. Thanks for coming along.
Yes.
Back you go
Bye.
to your Saturday evening. You go
I'm
and have
going
fun.
back
I've
on my
got work to
Saturday.
do.
Yeah, I'm going. Actually, I'm going South France.
You're going to the south of France.
Yeah.
Well done,
Hey,
nice.
ciao, George.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you.
So it's actually we have. I think I might mention this on even on live, but we've got a bunch of friends in common, don't we? Because Emanuela's drummer for her band that she had before the Hillbilly Moon Explosion, which was sort of like an out pop singer-songwriter thing, had a drummer called Dejan Jankovic,
Oh,
who,
Yane. Oh, okay.
Jane, who I believe you know,
Serbian
right?
guy. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
he was from Belgrade, yeah. And I think
I was
you
never
still
friends with him, but I believe he's still in Switzerland. I'm sure that there's at least a couple of
I've
guys that are
totally lost
watching this that
track of
actually know that.
but they all came. So you never, because they, a whole bunch of those guys, I think Tomar too, the guitar player, all came over during the Civil War.
Yes,
And,
but they're all much older than me. So they're like,
you're, I
like
see. All right.
10 years older than me. So I didn't know. Toma is a little younger, but but all of them, I think that Yane is like maybe 15 years older than me. I don't know, but
Yeah, it could be,
it's
yeah.
they I was a kid when they moved out of Serbia and then
Right,
came to Switzerland.
right.
And I believe that only Yane is there. I'm not sure. Maybe somebody on the live chat gonna mention that, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. I'm not confident.
No, that's the Serbian. Well, I mean, there are obviously, but there are lots and lots of former Yugoslavian people who came here to Zurich during the Civil War.
I think mostly from Bosnia, right?
Could be.
I
And then,
think
of course, a
so.
couple of years later, the Albanians all came.
Oh, really?
And
Oh, okay.
because I think whenever there's refugees, they tend to go to countries where they already have a family base, where
Hmm.
there already is a community. It's like with the
Makes
Syrians.
sense.
A lot of Germany got most of the Syrian refugees, whereas Britain didn't get that many. And I just think they had more. They had more people, families that were already there, so they already had a bit more of a network, and so they ended up in Germany. And so for Switzerland, I think it was very much the whole Yugoslav and former Yugoslav, and then later the Albanian thing. So the Balkans were they're still around. They're kind of they're the guys that keep the country going, as usual. It's immigrants.
Oh, yeah.
We get stuff done. Bye. Thanks.
um, oh, she's still there. All right.
No, no.
Well, a few people asked like if she can do it. And she's like Carlos Martinez. He's asked like, "Hey, one more, please don't go." but sorry, Carlos, she
Well,
had to
we'll
go.
well,
And
we were talking
Justin
about that
Roth, he
beforehand, weren't
said,
we?
you, Justin said, "You guys sound great. Can't wait to see you live again." Um, all right, you have like, let me read it. Like, this is like a bunch of comments here, so I want to make sure that we go through
Want me to
them
answer
before
any?
we go lost. PCP wrote, "It was 16 years ago today. I first saw the Hillbilly Moon Explosion at Shepherd's Bush Empire back in Stray Cats. I've been a fan ever since. I didn't even know that you played with the Stray Cats."
Yeah, the Shepherd's Bush Empire, which is obviously a lovely old Victorian um, theatre, technically. Yeah. I remember that gig very, very well because I was super, super nervous. And no, not because we were backing the Stray Cats, because we'd actually backed the Stray Cats a bunch of times. For me, that evening was really special because that was the second time in my life that I was meeting my brother, my half brother. So I have three half siblings. We both have the same dad. And we never met as kids. I think my dad sort of kept it a secret that he'd had me with a different woman. And when he died, we got in touch and we immediately saw each other. And we've been very close ever since. He lives in London. I go and see him all the time. He comes over here, etc. But back then, that gig at the Shepherd's Bush Empire was the second time I was seeing him because only a couple of months beforehand, our dad had died, and that's when I'd met him for the first time. And I was really happy about that. And I just knew that, wow, he's now coming to see me at that gig. And so I kind of played the gig. I think the gig was good, but I don't really have that many memories about the actual musical thing. I was just sort of like, wow, I'm going to see Mark, and oh my God. So that's a weird gig, that one. Yeah, remember it well.
That's great. That's a good story. Thanks for sharing that. Uh,
Bit personal.
Let me see what else. What else do we have here? Yeah, like lots of comments on your playing. I wish we had Emanuela here more. Um, well, Nick
I can
Hoadley, he
play some
wrote.
stuff. I mean, if there's anything you want me to show you, um,
Well,
I,
you we have to do a slap bass lesson at one point, but I don't have my bass here. So, and then I have a tradition that my guest has a lesson that shows me a trick or a line or something, so that we can teach the
I,
audience. But we can do that when I come back home when I have a
I
bass, right?
don't
We can do
think
it
I
again.
can teach you anything.
Oh man, like
I don't
everybody,
think.
like I mean, I learn like stuff like from, if I have a student and then they, after 3 lessons, they come like, I have this idea, and I'm like, oh, this is cool, and then I learned that, and you've been playing for like a long time, we'll figure out something cool.
I mean, if anyone has a question about, I don't know, some bass line or something, you can write it down and I can answer it maybe now. I mean, I usually play. I mean, that's the thing that maybe isn't standard. I usually play with these three fingers here. So it's usually, although this one tends to be, yeah, it's not really there. So I think these two kind of do the most of the work. And then sometimes I will then change to having these two, which then is slightly different angles. So then you can't see, can you? Maybe I have to move back. There we go. I find you get less actual bass if you go like this. You somehow, I guess, because of the angle, you pop it a bit more, and therefore it gets a bit more compressed. Usually, I try and do it this way. Which, as I say, I mean, since I often play like this, is kind of the way to do it. I've seen people play with just one finger. I've seen people, I also have a fairly high action. I've seen some people have this super low action and they hardly have to move their fingers because they just go and they can do all sorts of complicated stuff because everything's super low and they do it's all very sort of concentrated within a very small space. Now I can't do that because I always have to have my orangutan arms sort of shaking around. And if I would do that with very low action, I don't think I would be able to grab the string enough.
Yeah, with that like a super low action, you kind of lose the tone. That's what I noticed. So it's a little. It was never the thing for me. I prefer higher action, not as high as Ryan Gould, who was a star of the second episode of the Slapstream, who plays
Right.
super high action, gut strings, high action, but he's going for that old school pops faster, Billy Johnson type of sound.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's a different ball game.
Well, I think
Um,
again, the low action thing, it's like with bass guitar players. There's some bass guitar players, they have their bass really high up and they have some sort of high powered amp behind them and they just go really finely, they go doop, 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 and it goes boom. That's one way of doing it. Or you can do, Dee Ramone. You have your bass low and you just thrash into the thing and that goes boom too. It's just a different way of, it depends on the kind of song that you're doing. And I guess I need to have the feeling that I'm sort of laying into it a bit because otherwise I don't know. It just
yeah,
evolves.
whatever works. Like it's completely individual thing. Like if you're the songs are all that matters, So if it works for the song, it works. It should work for everything.
Well, I don't have that many fast songs. I mean, I listened to your Tiger Army, the latest single. I think it's the
Hmm.
latest single. That video there with the cars, you're playing around these
Yes,
cars. Yeah,
last
that
ride.
song, really nice singing, by the way. Your singer guy, who's good voice, and that's fairly fast. I mean, you're kind of slapping all the way through, more or less, aren't you? I think.
I'm slapping all the way through. Yes,
Yeah.
I
You see,
was
I
I was kind of
probably
going for a Bob Moore, Johnny Burnett type of vibe, just a little faster. I can't even play those like mostly
just
simplified
the
lines.
something like that.
Yeah, like a fifth down, and then just roots for because the chord progression is different, obviously, than Johnny
Uh,
Burnett. But it's I was going for that vibe, and but it is there is some fast slapping, and then it's cool. See,
I
Carlos
think this
knows
case,
everything.
I
Carlos
think with
mentioned,
my setup,
last ride.
you probably couldn't do your psychobilly tempo. Well, you could. I know Steve Whitehouse once borrowed my bass way back when, and he was able to, but that's because he's an absolute monster. But I think if you were doing something fast where you always have to go ticka 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 ticka, you kind of have to have something which is just a bit more efficient because otherwise that is kind of a lot of work, and you have to set it up in a way that you're not always. I also think the sound wouldn't be too good if I go really fast. Well, I don't
Sounds good to me.
know. But we've got a lot of stuff which is, the one that I just did. That's Desperation. It's kind of like a mid-tempo shuffle thing. We've got a lot of that, or even sort of straight stuff, which is so it's kind of a bit more. If I think back, there's probably a lot more of Demented in there than I realize. It's funny, actually. One of the songs that I usually try whenever I try out a bass is a song I've never played and never learned how to play, but
Surf
so,
Ride to
so
Oblivion.
yes. Why? Is that the one that everyone does, right?
I don't think so. But when you mentioned like upright bass, slapping, demented ergo, I'm like, it got to be that.
It's got to be that, and it's weird because when I was at what were they called? The guys who they made your bass, King Bass, they were called in
Jason
Santa Ana.
Burns.
Right, yeah, it's in Santa Ana, and I remember I was over there. This is when King Bass was still going, and I tried a bass, and immediately I went. And he says, that's Psychobilly 101, kind of like the first thing that everyone kind of has to do. And I just. I kind of know the way it goes, but I've obviously never played it properly. But that's Graham Grant, obviously. 'Cause Graham kind of wrote the book on that whole sort of school of bass, I guess.
Um, you have a question. Are you still using the Deuce bridge?
Yes, here it is.
All right.
There was a long wait because what's his name? He's also called Jason, right?
Oh, the guy. Oh, Jason Brown.
Brown,
Yes.
yes, not Burns. Brown, yeah, right. Jason
He
Burns is
actually works. He actually, I believe, he works at the the Blaskold shop now, doing his own
right.
thing. Or
Yeah,
he was working, or maybe he's out of it. But I
Jason Burns
last
went
time I saw
to
him, like I saw him at the Blaskold shop.
because Jason Burns is in London now, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
like he still keeps his shop in Orange.
right. Um, Jason Brown, that's right. It was a bit of a long wait. It was something like I ordered and it took about 2 years or something to arrive.
Oh yeah,
But it's a nice piece of kit. Now,
is that the
what's in
bass?
a big one?
Is that the bass that he made? That's not a bass that he made, right?
No, no,
Oh,
this is an old East German. No, it's just the bridge, the
the bridge. You're talking about Jason Brown. Okay, sorry.
yeah, just the Juice Bridge. And I think it became a bit more I think the tone has become a bit more focused. Is that the right word, I guess? So it's a bit more sort of precise. I found with the regular bridge that I had beforehand, my sound was a bit more boomier,
Hmm.
and it's just become a bit more concentrated now. I'm still sort of getting used to it. I didn't find there was a huge difference in volume. That's what everyone was saying. I didn't really notice that, but that's maybe because a lot of people who use them have gut strings and nylon and stuff. I don't know, but I like the fact that it's. I remember I was playing. I think that was the US tour, the West Coast tour 2 years ago, and I had loner basses and the bridges kept on popping, which is weirdly something that's never happened to me before. But on these loner bases, the bridges kept on popping, and then a guy in Portland very kindly lent me his bass for the next 3-4 gigs, and he had a juice bridge on it, and I just thought, well, this is anything that makes this setup even more robust, I'm fine. Because this bass is actually this is the same bass I've had since I was. This is the first. No, it's the second bass I bought because the first one I fell over on the ice and smashed it. And
Wow.
yeah, and this was the second one, and it's an old East German Musima. So, so Eastern Germany, the German Democratic Communist Republic of Germany, they had this instrument company, Musima, that made anything from church organs to ocarinas, and they also made stringed instruments too. And this is one of these. And back in the day, in the late '80s, these were the cheap basses that you could get. They're even cheaper than the Czech ones, which are also fairly cheap at the time. And
I have in Serbia. I keep my Russian bass that was also made in one of those communist factories that they had. They were making like all kinds of instruments. I believe that
yeah,
Thomas von Thomas, he mentioned that he had the same bass like that, one of those Russian basses. But I never seen a bass like yours. So
well,
was that?
this is the custom paint job. It's not. This isn't original.
Ah,
This
okay.
is a paint job. It was just. I wanted it to be as like two-tone sunburst, a bit like those 1930s jazz guitars. It was
Ah, cool.
your regular brown whatever. I forget what it. Yeah,
Just standard.
just standard. And the whole thing. What do you call this? That fell out. That broke. Um, the neck join. Is this the neck join? Yeah, I guess that's a neck join, right?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, you should know that, Georgia.
Well,
Okay, so
I'm a player.
that right at the beginning that broke, and I brought it to a luthier, and he said, "Well, of course it broke. Look, the glue is only sticking in three places." And so he did that. He shaved the the neck a bit. He put a different fretboard on it, and it's been hot rodded. So basically, so your blast cult bass is kind of, I would say that's like a super nice modern BMW, and this is kind of like, this is a hot rod. It's, it's old, and the original thing isn't too good, but we've put a nice V8 in it, and it can still, make noise and go like Sting. That's the way I see it. It's sturdy. It gets the job done. I've been all around. I mean, I've been all around Europe with it. I stand on it every single night. I hit it and stuff like that, and it's still here. I even record with it because it sounds okay acoustically.
So that's the only bass that you have now?
No, I've got a cutaway one. I think it's a Framus.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh, well, I seen that one in one of the videos, right?
Yeah, because I recorded that. That's one I have at home, and I recorded that at home. That was the video that we did with our iPhones.
Ah,
And
okay, cool.
I used that one over there. I always wanted to cut away because they obviously look really cool. It sounds shit. I mean, acoustically, without the pickup. Obviously, with a pickup, you can get it to sound good, but just as an acoustic instrument, it just sounds rubbish. And I've heard that from quite a few bass players who have cutaways. They say, "Yeah, don't use them like you would use another acoustic bass. They look
Huh,
cool."
interesting. We were talking about Jason Burns, and he actually has or had the same bass, famous cutaway.
Well,
So,
the one that you really want is I think it was Hopf, which was another German brand, and they also had a cutaway, but they had cat eye F holes. These really cool
oh,
sort of cat eyes thing, and I think they even had a binding and everything. So that's kind of the one you want. Sometimes even had sort of stripy. Yeah, pretty cool. You still see them in Germany, when you play some sort of festival, and there'll be a rockabilly
oh,
band. A lot of those
what's
guys.
that thing that you have on the side of the bass?
What?
What's that on the other side? That one. Oh, that's just
This
you
is
have a cheat
this is
sheet
just
or
this is just a bit of vintage pornography.
ah, okay, okay.
Well, if you get bored during a gig, you can go.
Yeah, yeah, life is good.
I've there again. That's been on since. In fact, I mean, it's become so scruffed. The poor girl looks like she's had a mastectomy on one side because it looks like a. Yeah.
Well, as long as it's firing, yeah, that's what it matters.
It's just been there for a
Uh,
while. I mean, I don't really. A lot of people put all sorts of. I've got one at the bottom. That's a change. At the moment, it says bollocks to Boris and bollocks to Brexit here at the bottom. So where's that? There we go.
okay.
But I don't really. I think this bass is kind of pretty the way it looks. So I'm not going to
I like it.
focus on it. Yeah.
I like that bass. I never knew. I mean, I should have thought of like it was custom job, custom paint job, but I for some reason I thought it was the original. Where Thomas is watching, and he said, "I have a '60s Russian bass from a factory that made furniture as well," and I believe that's the bass that I have,
Right.
and a '30s Russian one as well. I think that mine is from the '50s.
Thomas, I miss
That's
you. Hope you're well.
and
Can't wait to be
Missima
back.
bass I drive was built like a tank. Uh, and you played his bass on when you're on tour in the States, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, that was that tour where I had a bunch of loner basses, and the bridge kept popping, and then I'm so bad with names. I've just had a blackout. That really nice guy who helped me out in on Oregon. So I had that. That one was good. I had that one for about 3-4 gigs, and then when we did the last bit of the tour, and that was it started off with Long Beach. I just got in touch with Thomas and said I need a proper bass, and it was just sort of like such a relief. He was like, "Ah, oh, this is finally a professional instrument. Ah, oh, well, just call up the right guy from the start next time, won't you?" So yeah.
I have a question. I have like a few questions that I always ask my guests. How did you develop your own style of playing? What was the inspiration? You mentioned Steve Whitehouse and Lee Rocker as your influences. Are there any other names you would like to mention from back when you were starting, and then you kind of have your own style of playing now? So, like, how did you develop that?
I remember I remember seeing the Jets, and I was really impressed with the way that Bob Cotton was. I mean, Jets still are an incredible show band. I mean, they are super, super tight, and they will do lots of stuff like they will turn the bass upside down. Well, and he was just, you could just tell that this was a guy who probably did 250 gigs a year, because he would do all of that flashy showmanship, but he would never miss a single note. He always would be sort of like note perfect, and every slap was right in the groove, and that really impressed me. I remember that. And then it's funny, I mentioned Lee Rocker because obviously Stray Cats was the way I got into it, but I never really tried to emulate his style. I always thought he has a very unique style that sometimes he's got something which is, if I look at him, it seems very different from what I do. I always find whenever I see myself play, it doesn't feel like that when I play myself, but whenever I see a video of it, it looks like I'm sort of like orangutan arms. And Lee Rocker seems to have a very sort of compact and very sort of muscular way of doing it. So I don't think that's the same. I've seen so many superb bass players. I mean, Jimmy Sutton is kind of the one that I think he's just so amazing. He's just so really, really, really good. And the reason he's really, really good is that everything he does is super musical. It's like it just oozes musicality. It's just sort of like so groovy, and it's never too much. It's always right there where it has to be. Absolutely beautiful playing there. And I usually just find that whenever I'm at these festivals where I get to see a whole bunch of different bass players, I usually find that I'm just not really that good. I think there are a lot of people out there who are primarily bass players, and they take that seriously, and that's why they're good. And I'm not sure I'm primarily a bass player, because I think I always do what the song needs, which I think is the right approach. But that also means that I'm a bit of a minimalist. I I never feel the need to do more and develop my style more. It's I don't know if that's got to do with if you actually doing your own, if you're producing yourself, or if you're a band leader or so, that you I just don't really think of the bass as an individual instrument. I always immediately think of it within the context of the band. And so whenever I sort of see properly good bass players, I'm just reminded of the fact that I'm not much of a technician. you know?
Well, definitely the main function of the bass is like support a song, and support a soloist. Those guys actually get hired, not the ones that are flashy. Flashiness is cool, like, and it has its own place. But I completely agree with you what you mentioned. It's you have to do what's right for the song, and Jimmy Sutton is a great example of the guys, one of the guys that's really doing whatever is kind of the most proper at that particular uh, time in the song. So
Oh,
he's
absolutely.
I was supposed to feature him as well this one before, but the scheduling didn't work out. But I'm sure it will in a month or so when I once I move to the states, move back to the states. It's gonna be
Uh,
everything gonna be easier because
there's
I have my setup in Slapsville.
there's another thing that, I mean, if I think about the last couple of albums that I did with the Hillbilly Moon Explosion, and I actually produced them. There were a number of songs where I actually, during tracking, wasn't even playing bass. I was playing guitar, for instance, and that's because I always I would want to track with the instrument that I feel defines the song, drives the song. So there's this one track called Black Snake, and that's got this very sort of fuzz heavy tremolo guitar. It goes ding 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 ding, and so I just realized I'm just going to play that fuzz guitar together with our drummer, because the tempo of the fuzz will define the tempo of the song, and to make sure that that's tight, the only way to do it is basically to just play together live. And we always record live in the studio as a band and then overdub stuff afterwards, but it's always the core band is usually live. But that was a song I decided, no, I'll just do the guitar and the drums. Or the other one was a song called In Space, and that's driven by a guitar which has a very heavy slapback echo on it, which is slightly spacey. And there too, the echo defined the tempo, and I wanted to get that groove right. And I'm not a guitar player, but if I figured out a groove that sounds good, then I'm going to get that right, and that I will track with that. And then the bass becomes an afterthought. I just overdub that later.
It's
And
all
it's,
about a groove anyway.
yeah, and that's what I listen to in any band. I listen to two things. I listen to, is it swinging and groovy? And then I listen to the lead vocals. And sorry to disappoint you, Djordje, but I very, very seldom listen to the bass. I mean, the bass has to be there, and if you don't notice it, it's probably doing the right thing. Then
So
that's
why
probably,
have you chosen the bass? You're not disappointing me, you know.
I
There's a
chose the
reason why
bass
you're
because
here.
no, I chose the bass because it just turned out that way back when as a teenager I had a drummer, and then we found a guitar player, and I was still playing keyboards, and then I was like, well, I'll do the bass. As I said, a keyboard has 88 strings and a bass is 4 strings, so how hard can it be? And it just sort of turned out that way. And maybe if we hadn't found a guitar player, I might have sat down and sort of put in some work. I don't think it would have been good though. And I played a lot of bass guitar because of that, because I started off with a double bass, and then obviously bass guitar is even easier, and it was with this band that Emanuela then said, listen, forget the bass guitar, people just want to see you and that big thing. So, and I do a lot of,
And you stayed with the big thing.
yeah, I mean, we've got this this sort of kind of like Ramonesy punk rock song called Down on Your Knees, and there I play it like a bass guitar. I go, I do stuff like that. And here again, of course, it's good to have a decent magnetic pickup because you can actually do that. I don't miss it. There are some songs that I will do on the bass guitar in the studio because it kind of fits better. But for live, you're gonna. I'm just gonna do everything on this, and it works out.
Yeah, like having a magnetic pickup like opens up
Yeah, you can just do everything.
lots of options.
You do.
Like
I mean, it's always like the way I view it. If I'm in the studio, I'm going to use the studio to its maximum. So I'm going to, we've done songs that had a symphony orchestra on it. Now, no, we're not going to try and replicate that live. And all the acoustic guitars or anything or keyboards that we put into these songs, we can't replicate that live. Live, it's
you would never use a backing track.
no.
I mean, I know that you're not using, but I'm asking you, would you consider using that in the future?
You mean like with strings? It might be cool.
Strings, kids, angels.
I mean, I've seen stuff where the drummer. I went to see one of my favorite bands. I went to see the Ruts. They're now called the Ruts DC. One of the best punk bands from way back. I mean, and they're getting on a bit. I mean, I think the drummer's something like 65 or whatever he is, or 66. And they're terrific. And with some of their sort of like dub reggae songs that they have, he had a little pad there, and so he could trigger off some keyboard parts, whatever, and that worked perfectly, and it sounded great. You know, he put on the click so that he was in time, he was in sync with everything. It sounded great. Um, Never say never, but I like the idea of just, you know, being able to plug in and be ready to rock. I'm a huge Ramones fan, and there's something about it that I like to keep it, the live thing, just to be that sort of very sort of streamlined sort of commando operation. You go in there, you rock, and then you get out again. That said, we've done two tours with where we had Geraint Watkins on piano and two horns. That was great. Having saxophones and a proper good pianist, I mean, that rocks. That's really good.
Yeah, it can for sure. Um, there's while you having a bass, there's like a couple of questions for you. First one is from Invicta 1959. He had two questions. First, can you demo your bass line from Temptation, please? And another one, it's you've done some super cover versions, Call Me, Enola Gay, etc. What drew you to those? Enola Gay, is that Johnny Are You Gay or something else?
No, Enola Gay is the OMD song.
Ah, okay. Ah, okay.
Obviously, it's a guitar that does that. It's always just a matter of. I just think if you do a cover, if you have to do a cover, then the song has to be valid for you in some way, and it can be that in many ways. For Enola Gay, I always just found there's something celebratory about that song, even though it's about the atomic holocaust, and I kind of like that sort of, you know, subversiveness of that song. But it's you play that song and it's like, yes, and it's got this beautiful melody that sort of is playful and a bit 60s, a bit surfy, and something opens up when you play that song, and I guess that's what drew me to it, and the fact that it's "Is Mother Proud of Little Boy Today" and all that sort of Hiroshima references in the lyrics. I thought it's a very intelligent song. It's fun. "Call Me," I was just really grooving to that song for about half a year, and suddenly said, "Right, we've just got to play it. We've got to try it." And Emanuela's a massive Blondie fan. She used to perform "Dreaming." She on the solo stuff. I think she did "Dreaming." She did one or two Blondie things. And sometimes just alone with the guitar. And I just thought, "Call Me." That's very much an Emanuela song, because she's got that sort of Italian drama thing going on. And I thought "Call Me" had that sort of "Call Me." That worked really nicely. And that was actually a song which we actually approached slightly intellectually. It was like, okay, Duncan, play this song as if it was 1959. So it's like, so you've got a guitar and you're allowed an echo, but basically, how would you play that if you were, you know, before the days of bending strings, kind of thing? And so it's a bit like a sort of a concept song, and that's how we sort of got it together, and also the way the solo that is the melody kind of imitates the original synth solo melody, and I said, well, do the double stop thing, that the Johnny Burnett trick, and that sort of he then sort of used that and came up with this very iconic solo. So yeah, two different approaches to two completely different songs. As long as it can be many things. Now, which one was it? Obsession? No.
No, Temptation.
Okay, so, well, the main riff is. it's an octave. It's octave five. No, root five octave, and then you go up half a step, and then down again. And forget it. What? I haven't played that for a long time. Well, live, I then started. So the recording of that one has that. That's a production I'm sort of proud of. That recording it's got mariachi horns. It's got the guys from Calexico on it. It's got, I think I put piano on it. It's got, what's his name on the saxophone? Superb saxophone guy. It really sounds massive, that song. And for live, there again, you played as a three-piece instrument with vocals. There, I think I started, instead of going, I think I did the slap thing. It went. Yeah, I think that's the main riff. I mean, I assume that's what you were asking about, and it's in C. And then it goes down to E.
I guess that's what he asked.
Yeah, it's Temptation. It's an old jazz song, so it's got 10,000 chords in it.
Okay, so you have another. Play Dead Cat Boogie.
Dead Cat Boogie that's simple. That's. Well, my mama told me, Papa told me too. They don't know what she's up to. This dead cat. That's all it is. And then it goes. I think when it goes to I'm forgetting the lyrics. Come home late at night, talking out of your mind. Have to take a bath before you go to bed. Well, it's a dead cat. Dead cat. Turn the amp down. Well, all through the week, it's quite some mouse. Saturday night, you go from house to house. I ain't lying, you cheating kind of. That's a dead cat on the line. Etc.
All right. Another question. How did working with Sparky come about? My love for Evermore was the video that got me into Hillbilly Moon Explosion and has been a fan ever since.
Well,
I think lots of people got into the style. I mean, not just into your band, but also into rockabilly through that song. And you're not slapping on it, right?
I'm not slapping on it. I slap on it now. Live for live, I slap on it. I go. But there I wasn't, because we had an acoustic guitar going, and it didn't really need the slap. And I just, there again, it's live is a different situation. For live, you do different things than you do for the studio. In the studio, you just do what the song needs, and then for live, you do what the live situation needs. Well, how did that come about? Well, okay, let me throw another Telecaster on the fire and tell you about my time with Sparky. Well, I was a massive Demented to Go fan ever since that first album, what was it called? In Sickness and in Health came out. I remember at that time there was this record store that had a lot of the psychobilly stuff here in Zurich, and I would go there regularly. And so I already had Meteor's albums. I already had, I know, Frenzy, stuff like that. And then when that first album came out, obviously it's got a great album cover, Sparky in a wedding dress and stuff. It's brilliant. But listening to that album, it starts off with Bebop Lula, and it's just, wow. There I really felt, okay, this is a game changer, because up until then, a lot of people who were into 1950s rockabilly still could say, yeah, I kind of like psychobilly, some of it, because a lot of it was just fast rockabilly. And with Demented to Go, you kind of had to take a stand. You either said, yes, I love this, or no, this is an insult to rockabilly. So it was very much a Marmite thing. They definitely took the whole psychobilly concept away from just more slightly faster version of rockabilly. So that album was hugely influential. And what I always liked about his singing was that, of course, it sounds, scary and everything, but it was always very soulful, and he's got a good tone. He's actually got a good technique. He's a properly good singer. And what I always thought was that underneath all of those vampires and cripples in the woods and whatever he sings about, he's very much a big soppy romantic at heart. Now that I know him very well, yes, he is that. He's very much he likes singing love songs. And My Love Forevermore, I really wrote with the conscious idea to write the most well the most improbable rock and roll ballad. Like get Sparky and Emanuela, two completely different voices. Emanuela, who is known for having this very beautiful um, ballady voice, and Sparky was known for singing about rock crypts and whatever stuff like that. And I got in touch, and he knew the band, and he was a fan of the band, and I was a fan of his band, and we I sent him the demo, which he lost and didn't listen to. And we were recording the album by Beggar Steel, what became by Beggar Steel in Camden, and he was already living in Holland then, but he was in England at the time, and so the stars kind of aligned, and he was able to come by. That album was the one album we recorded everything live, including the vocals. So if you listen to the By Beggar Steel album, it's all us in the studio, Emanuela singing live in the studio. But My Love Forevermore was obviously the one we first did the instrumental, and then we got the two singers to come along. And it was it was kind of hard work, but it was great. I mean, we got on very well. He's a lovely guy, um, and I've since recorded with him so many times, and it's kind of gotten easier every time because once he's in the studio, he's kind of often very focused and very quick. I mean, for the last album which are only duets with him, the last I think 4 songs that he recorded. I mean, he came in and kind of learnt 3 of them in the morning, and by the end of the next day, he'd got all 4 songs in the can. You know, he's kind of fast. Yeah, and yeah, that was My Love Forevermore. And his girlfriend Jill was there with him, and she was doing a good job of sort of kind of being his minder, I guess. And you said something like we've got so and so many million views on YouTube. It's kind of down to Sparky, because if you look at which of our videos have the million views, it's the ones that are duets with him. I think Call Me has 1 million or something now, and the others maybe too. But it's Jackson, it's My Love Forevermore. Those are the ones that people really like. I think they like him singing love songs, and he likes singing with us because he always said he's got a whole sort of songs that he's written that he just says they don't really fit into the whole Demented Go repertoire because they're slightly ballady love songs, and obviously with us he could do them. Yeah, does that
So
answer?
some of those songs he wrote from the album.
From the last album, yeah, he wrote Broken Love, which is the opener, I believe. That's a great song. He wrote this song. I think I did that sort of 1960s tag on the end. That was me. But he wrote the song. He wrote the lyrics, and he's got the chords down. I think maybe Holger also wrote it with him, his guitar player.
I always thought about him that he was very talented guy, very musical guy. That he had a sense of um, what how music kind of function, and not just in a psychobilly way, like a more
Yeah.
kind of broad, if I can say, pop or radio friendly way, like that. How things.
It's that Welsh thing. They like their big vocals over there. They like the big, sort of Tom Jonesy. They like singers.
But he sounds
And
amazing. Like, I
he's
mean,
got
like would you like? I mean, when you take him out of the Demented Argo situation, he sounds different, and I think that he can really, in a way, he can shine more with you guys because it's a different, completely different setup, and which is interesting because it's probably not the most natural for him since he's been doing psychobilly since the beginning of psychobilly. So it was interesting, and but everybody loves it. Everybody loves that song, not just psychos or
he's kind of like.
rockabillys.
I mean, you've played with Lemmy, and I always find with Sparky, he's got that Lemmy quality in the sense that people genuinely love him as a person, that you just feel he's part of your universe. You know there's that sound that he makes that's part of your life, it's part of your universe. And if you've got a song which is is a song that people can relate to, and I guess My Love Forevermore obviously is love, so it's fairly universal.
And you wrote that song?
Yes, I wrote it with my mate Stephen, who I've written a bunch of songs with him. He's a Canadian singer-songwriter. He also lives here in Zurich.
Hmm.
I wrote, I've written Brown Eyed Boy with him. I've Get High, Get Low. I think even Johnny I Gay, actually. And My Love Forevermore, yeah.
Hmm. Are you the main songwriter of the band?
Yeah, ish. I've just recently, I mean, it kind of came about that way. But on the last couple of albums, I just thought, I mean, because I was hearing what Emanuela was doing for her solo stuff, because she's a songwriter and she's been a songwriter before this band. And she just kept the songwriting going for her solo projects and stuff like that. And I just sort of said, well, Queen of Hearts, for instance. Actually, no, she wrote that one for Sparky and her. She actually wrote them for her. But for instance, Obsession, which is on the last album, that's one of her first songs that she wrote way back for her first teenage punk rock band. And I just said, yeah, let's use that song. And I think she wrote another one, which I just think, if it fits in there, I'm fine. It's not an ego thing. Whoever's got a good song and it fits, yeah, it can be it. It just sort of, I just work differently than other songwriters. I only work under pressure. I only work when I know I've got to now write 7 songs. Some people write all the time. You hear from people there when they're on the road, they write songs. I saw that Reverend Horton Heat, the tour bus thing. It's like, well, here's his office. He does a lot of songwriting back here and stuff. I never do that on the road. I write songs when it's like, okay, the studio's booked in one month. We're going to the studio and we have to write an album, and then I sit down and I write the songs, and some of it really is sort of like, okay, here's the song. What should we do, Duncan? Okay, Stillman, could you change that? Whatever. Next day we go to the studio and record it. It really is
So
something
it's kind of
that
like a mutual effort at the end.
yeah, the way it then comes together. I mean, if you look at the songwriting credits, you'll see who's written what. I mean, if Duncan and Silva are mentioned, then it's definitely one of those things where I say, this is the song, but now I want you to do this and I want you to do that, and then it sort of comes together. And so, of course, I'm going to give them songwriting credits. But it is sort of last notice, which is something that Emanuela doesn't like at all, because she sort of says, I would like to be able to work on a song for longer to get the best, vocal performance out of it. I want to be a bit more familiar with the song. So that's kind of tough on her sometimes. But
Yeah. Well, different personalities, like
yeah, I mean, because she's one of those persons who writes all the time. That's it. She always has like 20 songs on the go. I don't. I also see a recording as it's always like a sort of moment in time. And
hmm
I listen to recordings and think, oh, I would do this differently now. But it's okay because back then, in that specific moment when we recorded it, that's the way we did it. So it's kind of like a historical document.
Well, yes. So Let's see. We got like a few more comments here. Omar said, "Damn man, I always think the same about Sparky and Lemmy." So see, you're not the only one.
Yeah.
Um, Louis said,
Sparky's
"Please
still
play
alive.
Buy,
Fingers
Bag, or
crossed.
Steal."
Buy bag of steel. That's not a very interesting bass line. It's so for instance, that's a song that I will always somehow always go like this. I don't know why. But I always end up going, and that's all it is. I mean, the
Oh,
guitar's
really?
well, the guitar's going. It's doing a sort of surfy, and then the. It's Manuela singing this, not me. That's the verse, and then the chorus. Oh yeah, the chorus is I just stay on the actual root. It's ba 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 beg steal, get on my knees and kneel. Ba 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 beg or steal. That's all it is. Very simple stuff. I
The
might
simple
throw in a
stuff is the best stuff.
I might throw in a double slap there sometimes.
You know, none of us started playing bass because of, uh, you know, Edgar Meyer or somebody. You know, like we all started because of Bill Black or Lee Rocker. So, all right, Carlos says another one. Can we hear Depression? You're singing that one, right?
Yeah, well, that one is that one I just played a root.
You can play that one a little longer and sing it.
Well, well, I can't see. I just do this. You can see. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I feel a force. Pull me up on my feet. Well, the lights are out and there's nowhere to run and I fall down. That's all it is. It's all very underwhelming when you hear it like this.
Well, whoever is into bass should know what they're getting into. You end up, for me, whenever somebody interviews me, like they one of the things that I always ask me is about playing with Lemmy, and playing with Lemmy was one of the best things that ever happened to me,
I'm
but it
sure.
was also one of the least creative things that ever happened to me. So it was just we had two basses. He was playing Rickenbacker and I was playing upright, so I had to really play simple. And I was young. I mean, I remember one story that once we were watching, one of his shows, and he hugged me. He's like, "Djordje, we're a funny band." And we're like, What do you mean? We have a metalhead, we have a punk rocker, a teddy boy, and a fucking teenager." The fucking teenager that was me. So, um, one
So,
more. Like, oh, what
what
do
did
you
he
hold?
do? I mean, did he have to play around his? Did he have to play around his bass? I'm guessing.
I mean,
I
it
saw
was
one
everything was
thing where he
so
was playing
loud.
acoustic guitar.
Everything
He was
was
playing
so
acoustic guitar at the beginning, wasn't he?
well, not with me. Like once I joined, it was kind of interesting because I was on a tour with my band Fish Tank Ensemble that I mentioned, my Romani style band, and Danny booked this gig, and then I made scheduling. Everything was all. I'm gonna play this tour, finish it in Portland, fly down to LA, do these shows with Lemmy and Jim, Slim Jim, and Danny Harvey. So, but like our booking agent from Fish Tank Ensemble, she made a mistake. So she's like, "Oh no, you're on tour with us for another 5 days." I'm like, I can't do it. I already committed, confirmed this. And so they were like, "Okay." So I did like some extra shows, but I was not anyway, I was not able to come on time for a rehearsal. So, and Lemmy was like, "All right, so since our new bass player is not here, so I'm just going to play electric bass." So he brought electric bass, but I made the rehearsal. And uh, so we had two basses, and we're like, "All right, let's try this." So
Cool.
that, that's what happened. But that thing was so loud. It was just
Yeah.
like, it was just, I better play something, and look cool, but
I bet you were
everything
glad
was
to have.
so loud.
I bet you were glad to have Mac pickups then, eh?
Yeah, I mean, I was playing. What was I playing? I was playing my friend's bass. Um, that did not have Mac pickups actually, like on that
Oh,
first rehearsal. So it was a nightmare. I mean, I mean, I can't even describe how loud I was. Like we were in a small room. Slim would be in one corner, I would be in the other corner. It would be Lemmy and Danny in between us, and I could literally not hear drums at all, like zero drums. I mean, it was so loud. I couldn't hear myself at all. I could just hear his bass, a little bit of a guitar, and that's it. So, but it was great. I mean,
but hey, it's terrific. It's something to tell your grandkids about. Come on,
yeah. Oh
you
wow,
want to
my
do
coolest
something
story.
terrific.
That nowadays they call, I mean, in LA or in the Rainbow, they call double Jack and Coke. They call that Lemmy.
Yeah,
So my coolest story for the grandkids is that I had Lemmys with Lemmy for breakfast. So
excellent.
yeah.
That's pretty good.
um,
I never met him. I know Duncan played pool with him. Duncan in some other band, some festival. He ended up playing pool with him and Campbell.
he loved
Wish,
playing. He loved playing pool.
wish, up there, yeah. Yeah, and he just said, totally lovely geezer, nothing,
He was
kind of
great.
nothing
Yeah,
special, just a lovely guy.
he was great. I mean, I loved the guy.
Man,
I don't know. It was really good
didn't really.
experience, like playing with him. While you're having a bass, another question that I always ask my guests is the terminology that you're using. Can you just show me what would be a single slap for you? What would be a double slap? Or what is the terminology and all the tricks that you're using?
I don't
If
know.
you're
You said
using any terminology,
so.
like,
Well, I don't really. So, what do you call this? What would that be for you?
well, I'm asking you, how would you call it? I have my own thing that I even wrote an article about it on the art of slap
I don't
bass.
know.
If you guys are not familiar with the art of slap bass, you should be. It's the only website dedicated to upright slap bass technique that I
I'm familiar
started
with that, but I'm not
now.
familiar with the article. I'm For me, that's walking bass, but it's just got the slap in it. And I don't know what you call that. That's if I sound check, that's what I do. I do a walking bass. I usually, I don't know. That's, I guess the yeah. Is that single slap?
Well, I would call it single slap. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's single slap. Right. Triple slap is obviously right. Okay. And there's okay. That I actually can say something. So depending on the tempo, if it's slow enough, I actually will. For triple slap, I actually will slap it twice, kind of like you slap it if you're doing a Route 5 in country. I'll actually do. So I'm actually going. I'm, you know, I'm slapping it all the times. If it's faster, you do the thing where you use the palm of your, what do you call this? The thumb, palm of your hand, I guess. There you go. So you're going, you pull it, and then you slap it with the palm, with this bit here, and then you go down, and then you slap it with your fingers as usual. Because slapping it twice after a certain speed, you just can't keep up. Because I'll try just slapping it twice. You see, after a certain speed, I'm just not fast enough slapping it, and so you go. Can you see that? Does that make sense? Is that the way you do it?
Um,
Yes.
well, I don't have that problem about with the speed. Always try to make
Of course you don't.
as less
Of
motion as
course you don't.
possible. So if I'm doing I noticed that less motion gives me more speed, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
You
sure.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I do use that part that you mentioned, but I would use it for different patterns. I would
Okay.
use it for either for that roll slap or the some people call drag,
Is
stuff
that
like that. So
is that a drag?
the one that you call like ring ding ding ding
Yeah.
ring ding. You know, the
Yeah.
Kevin Smith does that all the time. Kind of like
Something
a
like.
fast gallop.
Yeah, I can't. I don't think I can do that properly. I kind of just go. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, but I just I don't know. I think that's now that's one thing for triple slap. I kind of just figured it out myself because I realized, I was listening to say Frenzy and then song which is in shuffle but it's fast and you do the triplets. So it's how do you do that? And then I realized, well, if you use this thing where you go, it actually is less movement because you're just going zing, 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 zing. You're doing a sort of something which for me at least was natural. So it's, I guess that works. Um, yeah. So that's triple slap. What do you call what would you call that?
I I usually call it rumba
Yeah. Okay.
because it's 3-3-2.
Yeah.
So it's 1-2-3, one two
But
three
I
one two.
do that. I used to do it a lot when I had solos. So stuff like that, and then you can go. You can throw in a quick triple at the end and stuff like that. Here's where you combine both. There we go. Yeah, I've never really thought about it that way. Yeah, that's I guess the thing I do a lot. And then I haven't. We don't have a solo in the current set, but I used to do a thing where I just do um, fourths, and then there I'm just slapping two strings at a time. So I'm taking kind of doing a claw thing. I'm taking the index finger for the G string here, and the middle finger for the D string here. Another thing I do is that I actually do fifths. I sometimes do it in Call Me. So you've got how's the song go? Color me with this. Okay. And then it goes, call me, my love. That's the call me chord progression. So there, I've got a small fifth at the end. I go, and sometimes I'll actually even throw the fifths into the actual chord progression. I'll go. The intonation is all off. That's the one thing I find. The intonation is just all over the bloody place if you don't play regularly. Yeah, that's maybe 2, 3 of the little tricks I do. A bit. I don't do much.
Double stops are always fun. Are you doing so when you're doing double stops? You're always using you playing either fourths or fifths, never thirds or something else.
I think I have. I might have, but I can't think of any song I've used it in. So yeah.
And another question about the double stops. I noticed that you're using uh, middle finger on the
on the
lower string and the index finger on the higher.
yeah.
It's interesting because I have the opposite. I
Oh, so
use
you
like
play.
that.
So you have to go from the
Yeah,
bottom then, which
that
feels
this is
cool.
my setup when I play because it's
Yeah.
interesting. Not it's one thing that you might notice, but you might not know. Like not many people use these two fingers for slapping, and that's what you're using mostly, right?
I am mostly, yeah. And as I
Me
said,
too.
sometimes
I'm
I'll
using
then
the.
change to I'll change to finger gun mode sometimes.
Uh,
Yeah.
I
But
mostly use these, but
yeah,
and then for me when I play double stops, if I slap like this, then it's kind of the easiest, like just to do this. It's kind of
yeah.
like no movement, you know.
Yeah. I guess I just have more, I don't know. Something
But I
I
use
never
that.
thought
I
about
use the same setup, like the same that thing. If I play three strings at a time, then I use it like that.
You
But
play
it's
three
if it's
strings at
two,
a time
I mean sometimes
and you
I
slap them.
I had that like
Wow.
that, yes.
Yeah.
But then you can have like more options, to create nicer chords.
Wow.
I used that actually in my song Atomic Boogie that I posted on YouTube
Okay.
15 years ago. and
Oh, I've
I
seen
was,
that one. Well, that's how I first
oh
found out
man.
about you. Is that the one where you start with bowing and then go into then you go pits and then
No,
slap and then
no,
go back
the
to
one with
bowing?
the no, the one with the bow is with the belly dancer. It's not just by myself. But the
There's one that is really old because that's when I first found out about it, and I was like, oh my god, because you're bowing and then it's kind of more like a demo thing, just showing what you can do, I guess. And you're bowing and then you're doing pits and then suddenly there's this slap, thunderstorm of slap, you know, awesomeness that descends onto you. And it's like, whoa. That's kind of what was missing in this genre. Someone who actually has a classical back. You've got a classical background, right?
yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, who else? Which other double bass player in the rock and roll scene do you know who has that? Probably not.
I mean, unfortunately, not. There's like a few classical players that I met, um, that know how to slap, but they never put lots of effort into slap. Slap was it's still my passion. So it's like I put like most of my effort into developing and learning about slap. But classical, I did everything that my conservatory and symphony orchestras asked me to learn. So I did that because I love that music, and I classical education for me was more about learning music than learning classical music, understanding
Yeah.
music. So that was the thing with jazz and classical school for me. I'm primarily a rock and roll guy, but I do play the other styles. But I use the other styles to develop slap and kind of like develop
Well,
music that I play.
I sometimes wonder if one of the reasons why it's sort of rockabilly and rock and roll has sort of kind of stayed pigeonholed in this slightly sort of subcultural thing is that I think the scene is the most of the musicians. It's slightly different in the US, but most of the musicians, at least in Europe, are often fans first and musicians second. So they're super fans of that 1950s thing, and that's kind of the most important thing. And they're not really that interested in expanding because they just want to do that one music. And I think you always you always end up with better bands if musicians if the people who are playing are musicians first who had just happened to be playing this music, because then you'll end up with something which is more interesting.
It's tricky, I have like my solo project as well that I'm kind of have my my main my main focus. Like I mean, like I'm as I said, like I'm mostly rockabilly and rock and roll guy, but I wrote a bunch of songs that are Balkan odd time signatures, and then surf songs, and then rock and roll songs and jazz songs, but they're all kind of like my own style. And then whenever I have to play that on the show, I basically every time I need to have fusion musicians. I can't have rock and roll guys. I need to have fusion musicians.
Yeah.
And I really do not like fusion music. So it's a little tricky. It's I'm not sure what's trickier, but I always end up teaching the style to fusion musicians because they're capable of doing anything, but they don't have same taste as I do. So it's as a rock and roll person. So it's
But if you're the
it's
band
it's
leader,
kind of like a balance.
yeah, but that's not really a problem. If you're the band leader, you can dictate the style and the taste, kind of. Which is why it's important that in a band like that, someone actually does call the shots. My band here, so Emanuela has no, sure, I mean, she's a huge Wanda Jackson fan, always was, but her singing has got nothing to do with, she couldn't sing a blues if her life depended on it. She's so not American in her approach to singing, and yet we do something. We playing this music, which is ultimately one of the most American forms of music there is. Sure, it's got our twist, but ultimately, yes, we're borrowing a culture here. But I do think that's the reason why it starts sounding interesting, because she sounds kind of weird for this music. Silva, well, our drummer, he played African music for most of his career. He was in a rather successful African band. He was as a Frenchman. He was weirdly enough in an African band, and then he played reggae for a long time. And I think he started with blues. His father is a very famous French blues boogie pianist. So he's just a terrific drummer who's into the groove thing. And I just thought, hey, someone who's played African music and reggae all his life to play rockabilly, that's kind of the drummer I want, because he's going to be swingy as fuck. That's groove related music. And Duncan
Yeah,
is
reggae guys definitely have the shuffle.
oh, totally, and Duncan he's played lots of stuff. He played lots of jazz, and he's, for instance, very much into prog rock, which is something I can't really get into.
Yeah.
But well, I'm just distrustful of any music that has no female fans. I don't know, and I usually pull his leg about that. But because of that, you can tell he's got a very sort of very wide open approach to any sort of music. And being a lead guitar player, of course he's going to love rockabilly and that old school rock and roll stuff, because it's all about, playing a hot solo and otherwise just sort of being a member of the band that just sort of complements the vocals, which is, even though we don't sound like a 1950s band and we never wanted to, we still have that kind of 1950s approach in the sense that everything is built around the vocals. And then you've got your little moment to shine in your solo, and that's what you then you sort of show off, and afterwards then you just get back into the groove with the rest of us. So it's always good to have musicians that are not from the same genre playing something like that, I think. Now, I just saw that Andrew Verdugo, my good mate Andrew. Hey, Andrew, I hope you're doing well. San Diego, do you have any warm-up exercises or favorite riffs? Warm-up exercises? Yes. This here, sir. Thank you. Next question. Favorite riffs, though? I don't know. Do you have any favorite riffs? I don't know. All of them. Anyone that I actually can play. So at the moment, not many, because you might have heard that when we did that song before and with Emanuele. It wasn't very groovy, my bass playing. It just sounds like work at the moment. I'm really rusty.
You had another question. Um, Let me see. From Carlos. Hey Oliver, why don't you guys do a live streaming like the Delta Bombers did? That was cool.
Okay, yeah. Now, yeah, we've thought about that, and Emanuele and I, we did a sort of question answering session, and I was really, I was kind of uncomfortable with that. I thought I looked like a jerk and sounded like a jerk and behaved like a jerk. Probably kind of more or less the way I'm behaving now. But I think some people take to that very well. I mean, so many bands immediately, as soon as lockdown came in, they started doing online gigs, streaming gigs, stuff like that. I mean, Becky Blanca, absolute genius girl in LA. She's been doing a daily gig every single day since lockdown. She recently had a 100th gig. I think now she's up to 120 or something. It's just her she calls it the power hour, and it's 1 hour, and she just sits there with her banjolele and her guitar, and she sings songs. She's got a great voice. Um, and she just does that. And she also, I think she said it's sort of also a bit therapeutic that in lockdown you have to kind of keep going as a musician. And I think that's terrific, but I found it really difficult to sort of latch onto that, and I found myself actually sort of falling into a bit of a lockdown depression kind of thing. And I kind of just thought, well, okay, it's lockdown. You know what? Maybe that's also, we'll just do less stuff at the moment. I'm not even sure if that's our forte. I think I think people like us as a live band, and they like us because we can write songs that people can relate to. I'm not sure if this, I don't think any of us is that sort of bubbly personality that's going to be entertaining during lockdown and stuff. I don't know. It's maybe I should just get off my bloody arse and do something about it. Fair
It
question.
depends how long this thing gonna last. So we we don't
Well,
have a
no,
clue.
we're not in lockdown here in Zurich anymore. It's
Oh,
probably going to
cool.
get, they're probably going to lock it down a bit more because I mean they've like
Gonna be a
before.
second wave.
Yeah, I think they are. I think in Israel they've already got their second wave.
It's like Los Angeles is getting worse and worse. It's just crazy. Just announced that school's not gonna be open for another
Hey,
year.
but my friends
If
in
schools are not
Phoenix,
open,
so Arizona has kind of like one of the highest infection rates worldwide. It's crazy because they've got some, I don't know, probably got some
it's
Republican
kind of
government.
depressing that US is in such a bad shape. But it
It
is what
is.
it is. Um,
It's. I always. I mean, I love the US and all my friends there, and I love it so much. And I just think it's really, really depressing what people are doing to that country.
oh yeah, it's crazy.
I'm not. I should
Uh,
just shut up though, because in England, I'm not saying that the English are doing anything better. Bloody hell! If you want to cock something up, you. Yeah. Anyway, we're talking about
oh
bases,
man,
not.
I'm from Serbia, so one of the worst situations right now. It's in Serbia, so we even have protests now that are it's just ridiculous. I
Yeah.
don't want to get into it. It's so
Okay.
you know we're
Let's
we're
talk about other
psychobillies.
stuff.
We're like no politics zone. Another guy, Zoran Jurisic, he wrote ask the cell phone video maybe, but you already did the cell phone
We
video.
did the cell phone video. Yeah, that was. I mean, there again. I think it kind of turned out okay. Um,
It turned
I
out
found
great.
it.
I really like
I
it.
found it a lot of work, but that's. I think that's just got to do with my own sort of general. I don't know, my own general mood. It was the concept. I just said to Silva, I said, okay, get yourself a click, play the song, just the drums. So he recorded the drums on his own, on his iPhone, sent me the file. I then recorded bass on top of the drums with my iPhone. Duncan the same, next, and then Emanuela at the end. And I think for Emanuela, it would have been best if she could have had one of those little lavalier mics or something like that. But she also just put them on, cell phone in front of her. So there was a bit of her vocals sound a bit crashy because there's, obviously room noise, ambient noise, and stuff in there. But
Well,
I
these
think
are
it turned
trashy
out okay.
times.
Yeah, big
These are
one.
trashy times.
There you go. Yeah, it turned out okay. I think Duncan recorded his bit right down here, um, and I recorded the bass at home, and Silva did his drums and his thing, and Emanuela in her house. So that was fun. We might. I mean, now we
Eh,
should be back to playing together again, but it's just a question of gigs. I don't know if there are going to be any.
And all of you guys live in Zurich, right?
We all do, yeah. So we've got a Frenchman, two Brits, and a Swiss girl, and we all live in Zurich.
All right, so you have another Carlos question from Carlos. Depression was great. Would you please, if you have time, to sing "The Night of the Living Ted"?
I don't remember the night. Oh, that's one where I did one of those Johnny Burnett, Dorsey Burnett. Just it's just one of those. How does it go? Things will arrived in train in the south of France, booked to play a gig at a rock and roll dance. You can't really hear it very well because I kind of have to sing low, so I'd have to go like this. But I probably can't do that one properly, and I haven't performed it live now for about 5 years.
All right,
Arrived
Carlos.
in train in the south of
Next time,
France.
then that one.
It's the night of the living Ted. That's a true story, though. That one. It was. We were. We arrived by train. We were booked to play a festival gig in the south of France, and we took the train. We took the Tjv, which was really cool, and I took my bass along because it was in the train. And when we arrived in Nîmes, which is this beautiful city in the south of France, so there's a Roman arena and everything, they just said, well, we're going to pick you up at the station. And we were standing outside that station and wondering, so where's our chauffeur? And we saw this white Cadillac stretch limo drive up. And I remember Luke sort of said jokingly, I bet it's that one. Turned out it was. And the driver got out, and the driver was kind of like the French, she really was kind of like the French Dolly Parton. She was this little blonde girl with big hair, massive boobies, and she was small and had sort of lots of glitter and rhinestone something on and white cowboy boots. And she could hardly speak a word of English, and she just said, are you the Billy boy Billy? And we said, yeah, we're Billy boy Billy. And yeah, she was so she was our ride, and we then had to get this into that stretch limo, which was kind of funny. And it was a festival that had Crazy Cavern and the Rhythm Rockers headlining, and we were watching Crazy Cavern, and it was just a sea of Teds, old school Teds were there, and Crazy Cavern did his thing where he sort of leant in, so, ever the pro. He did a great set, and he sort of leant in, and then his fans just sort of pulled him down, and sort of standing on the side of the audience, you could just sort of see, Cavern was gone. He was just like, no more Cavern. And every once in a while, you would see sort of one foot of his would come up from that sea of Teds, like with his creeper that was come up, and then he would see his hand and whatever, and and ever the pro, he kept on singing, so he still had his microphone. But we had the feeling, hey, he's gone. He's just going to drown in that sort of sea of drapes and quiffs and creepers. And then eventually, they managed to push him back on stage, and he finished the song. But that was when Duncan then coined the term, that was the night of the living Ted. And yeah, and so that's the song, because it's arrived by train in the south of France, booked to play a gig at the rock and roll dance. French Dolly Parton in the stretch limousine came to pick us up at the station of Nîmes. I'm remembering it now.
Oh, man, that's a great story. Well, Calvin definitely had something special about him. Like from all those like Teddy Boy bands, he had some kind of uniqueness. Something that we were
Yes.
talking about, Sparky and Lemmy. Like he had his own thing.
Well, yes, and he had an immediately recognizable voice. So that's the one thing that I find is sort of lacking in this genre that we have, in this style that we're sort of kind of engulfed in, this psychobilly rockabilly style. There aren't that many really superb singers, and it's kind of weird because it's very, very much a vocal driven genre. I mean, the big heroes of this genre, people like Elvis and Little Richard, and you know, and these are like the, you know, voices of a century, because you know, one in a million can sing like those guys. And every time someone does have a noticeable, really good voice, J.D. McPherson, people like that, then suddenly you listen up. And those people often actually then go on to become, you know, actually go on to greater things. There are so many bands out there where singers are kind of okay. I mean, you can't be completely shit to do this, but you, to make rockabilly really interesting, you really need a damn good singer. You need someone who has, and it doesn't even have to be good in a technical sense, but it has to be unique. It has to be something that
A
immediately,
personality.
yeah, well, it has to be something which is, yeah, I guess a personality, yeah. You know, something that you can just say, oh, that's Kevin. That's Sparky. You know, it's just something. John Lewis from Wales. I mean, that's another guy. You know, he opens his mouth. It's John Lewis. Nobody sounds like him. He's a terrific singer. You know? And you kind of need that for it to be interesting. And that's what Cavan definitely had. Because otherwise, if I listened to Crazy Cavan, I always thought they were kind of like the Ramones of rockabilly. Many songs kind of sound similar, you know, and they never
Yeah,
really
yeah.
changed over the years either. And that's a really cool
Well,
thing that you've got this band that has
talking
that.
about Motorhead, Motorhead never changed. They kind of
Yeah,
always sounded the
it's
same.
recognizable. It's iconic, and it's something I think
Yes.
people. Sure, people like bands that are creative and eclectic. They like that, but they also like bands that always sound the same because it familiarity feels like home, and people want to feel they belong. And so if you listen to AC/DC, you know it's going to sound the same way they always sound, and that feels, you know, that sort of, it's like a warm embrace. It's sort of like, yes, I know this. Oh, it means something. They're still the same. You know, it'll be okay. Mum and dad is
It's
still
kind
there.
of cool that you mentioned Coven. Coven is also is another guy that I would actually like, that I have had a chance like to see him perform with a different band. Like somebody to take him out of his comfort zone and put like a different musicians, like behind him, and have created something like
Yeah,
what you created with Sparky.
yeah. I wonder. I know. So and then
Yeah, well, it won't
what happened
happen.
after that? What happened after that was on the first time we played Cardiff. Then I got an email from the support band saying, "Hey, we're your support band. Seems like you've got a song about killing my dad." It was signed Joe Grogan, and that was Joe from Graveyard Johnny's, and we met the first time. It's not about killing his dad; it's about that we thought he was dying. But I just thought that was so cool that it's sort of like, oh my god, this is his son. He's a guy you need to get on the show. Joe's an absolute terrific guy, and Graveyard John is a really good band.
Cool. I'll check them out. Uh, Something that I wanted to ask you is, uh, I'm not sure how your experience is, because it seems that you were mostly focused on your own bands. But is
Yeah.
there any advice that you can give to other bass players, like how to get a gig? Like how what would you what would be your thing? What would you say? Like what is the best way to get a gig and to get a in a good band?
Have your shit together, basically. I mean, it's the own story. I mean, so when our first guitar player from the Hillbilly Moon Explosion left the band, he was called Patrick. We were sort of asking around about who should we ask next, and we asked Duncan, and we also asked the guy who was called Patrick, who used to play in my old teenage psychobilly band, the Hillbilly Headhunters. And I was sort of like, yeah, well, I'm not sure if okay, we can give him a go. And I remember Luke and Manuela saying, no, he'll be cool. And I met up with him and said, okay, here are 6-7 songs if you like them, and I'll get in touch and just learn these 6-7 songs, and we'll have a jam session. See how it goes. And then when I it was time for me to get in touch, I just couldn't reach him. Not by phone, not by email, not by text message, nothing. It just went, and then I just suddenly thought, well, you know what? If someone can't pick up a phone, he's not that good a guitar player. I don't care how brilliant he is as a guitar player. If he can't pick up the phone, then he's not good enough. And Duncan was a terrific guitar player who actually, arrives on time. And it's that old story. Pick up the phone, have your schedule, together, and have your shit together. Uh, Gig wise, as a bass player, that means so have a setup which is simple and easy and is very quick to set up and will sound good, because you don't want to sort of come to a session and say, okay, wait a moment, guys, I need to plug this in over there. Do you have a guy who can? You don't need that. You just have your own setup that's going to sound good for whichever gig it is, which is another reason why I like Mac pickups. You just plug in and it'll be okay. And just make sure you know the songs and show up on time and don't be a dick and don't sleep with
That
the lead singer's girlfriend and I don't know, stuff like that.
that's a
I mean,
crucial
I've
one.
done quite a few gig. There are quite a few bands where I played bass on besides my main bands, and they were
Oh,
kind of local things. And I must say, I always really enjoyed being the bass player standing in the back to the left. I really like that when it's. I mean, in my bands, I kind of always was the lead singer. I only sing lead on maybe a quarter of the songs in this band, but it's I'm very much up front. I feel, since I'm the band leader, I feel it's kind of my responsibility to get stuff together. And it's kind of weird if I do gigs, I'm hardly ever listening to what I'm playing because I'm always listening to the drums. I'm listening to Duncan. I'm listening to Emanuela. I'm sort of thinking, will Duncan remember the break? And Silva, can you make sure you go onto the ride and not onto the hi-hats? I'm always thinking about the whole song, and I'm kind of just playing on autopilot. And if you're just the bass player for a band, it's just great to be able to stand back and concentrate on your instrument and just make sure you lock in with the drummer and you just groove. I love that. And let the others do the work. It's brilliant.
yeah, that's one of my first questions. That if a new band leader calls me to play a gig and I accept it, one of the first things that I ask do you want me to be in the back, like be like stand like like just be focused on the pocket with a drummer, or would you like me to be a showman? Would you like me to do things with the bass and play like a madman, like whatever whatever gig is um, is asking for? Which brings me to another question. Like,
Well, with
what
you,
would be
if
your
any musician has two brain cells, they would want you to be a showman because I'm sure that's such a crowd pleaser. A double bass, a guy on a double bass who can do a bit of a show, is always a crowd pleaser, and no band leader should deny that to their audience. That would be silly. Sorry, I interrupted you.
okay? So that brings me to another question. So the band leaders that you were working with, what were they saying about slap? Were they usually saying, "Hey, you know, play more slap," or "Don't play slap," or
They loved
what's the thing?
it. No, they loved it. They always loved it because it was there again. It's kind of like a crowd pleaser, and it's something that makes them a bit more unique. And they always wanted me to do the slap if possible. And then sometimes you can't do it for just because musically it doesn't really help the song. But they always wanted the slap. I'm now playing this old-timey band, which does kind of like old-timey mountain music. It's called Root Hog or Die. And there I'm just sort of doing that all the time. And usually I'm not even slapping because it's kind of, I find it's a bit too, uppity and it gets in the way. And I just think, no, I just want to sit there and play Route 5. And I love doing that. I really love doing a whole evening of just Route 5. Brilliant.
Yeah, that's what I was actually really thinking about, that Appalachian or bluegrass music, where slap could work, but most of the time bluegrass people insist on a pizzicato and like not using slap except for solos. I talked a little bit about it with Mark Rubin and Marshall Wilborn, who were previous guests on the Slapstream.
Okay.
Um, do you have any advices that you could say for younger, to younger bass players, and like maybe point out some mistakes that you had during your career that you would do something differently bass wise?
Find a good drummer. That's Find a good drummer. I mean, because the most important thing that you're going to have to learn is to be in the pocket with the drummer. You have to be super groovy and it has to be tight and it has to sound like it's not hard work. And for that, you kind of need a drummer who's already kind of groovy, but you need that drummer where you can sort of fit in there and he gives you that space. So that's sort of something that you can't really do yourself. I mean, if you're lucky, you've got a drummer like that, and if not, then it's really hard work. Um, Apart from that, I mean, I think when you start out when you're young, you're going to. I think that's all musicians do the same thing. Lead guitarists too. Kind of want to do the flashy stuff first because that's fun and that's that rocks and it makes you go. Young guitar players are going to learn how to do the flashy solos first, and then actually go back and realize, well, maybe I should make sure that chugging rhythm is really tight and in the pocket. And I did the same thing. So I started, learning triple slap and everything before I figured out why this bloody song isn't swinging. And then realized that, well, me and the drummer, this is an old band of mine that I had. The drummer was kind of playing when he was doing shuffle, he kind of had a slightly sort of 16 feeling, and my shuffle feeling is very much in triplets. It's always with me, and he was like ding, 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 ding. I don't know, white boy thing, I guess. Uh, what,
Yeah, that pocket is something why we all love American roots music. And
yes.
I would say that's something that I learned actually once I moved to the States. That might
Yeah.
be even the reason why I decided to move to the States, because I was
Oh, I can
always
so
playing
relate to that.
rockabilly and jazz and blues. And then, but once I moved there, I kind of like, hey, this groove is a little bit different. I played all these songs, but the
Yeah,
groove is a little bit different. It's, especially if you play blues with all, like older like black musicians, you get into that backbeat in a different way than with
totally,
blues musicians in Europe.
totally.
It's a different vibe. It's a really a different vibe. And it's interesting. It's kind of like magic. All right, so these are all the correct notes. They're on a click or not on a click, whatever, but they're in time, but they sound different. This grooves and this doesn't groove. This is kind of okay, and this
Yeah.
is wow. So
Well,
it's tricky.
I had difficulty finding drummers here in Zurich that were groovy, and I kind of find it interesting that I mean your mate Dejan Jankovic, he was Serbian, he was one of my drummers. Then they had a Dutch guy, then we had a Kiwi, and then we had now we've got a Frenchman, and we had an English guy too in between. It's I've got a lot of I don't know. They tend not to be local. I don't know if I'm being racist now or something, but I always found there was, it can't sound stiff.
Oh yeah.
I think, if there's this sort of European drum and groove that was often a bit stiff, where it's like, no, we can't be that. It's got to have that looseness. But what do I know? I'm as European as fuck. So yeah, this young guy starting out. That's kind of find your musicians, and if you've got someone who's good, then stick with them. And otherwise, learn. It kind of helps if you learn chords and notes and stuff like that. And I know that there are lots of bass players who can't read music, and there are lots of bass players who don't know about chords. And I'm not saying that you can't make great music if you can't do that, because there's so many bands where everyone's just DIY and they end up playing great music. But if you want to get gigs, it's good to know how, some certain standard chord progressions work, and you know how to play walking uh, bass lines around them. And even better if you kind of just learn the fake book and the real book and all that stuff, I guess, depending on what kind of gigs you want. I mean, I never did, but that would be good if you can just someone you can just sort of plonk into a jazz gig is always going to be working. Someone you can just plonk into a country gig is always going to be working. So just sort of, learn about basic song structures and learn the Nashville system, the one with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's probably the easiest thing. Because on bass, it's easy, you can just shift wherever you want. It's not like guitar where you then have to turn chords around and stuff, or on piano where you're suddenly only on the bloody black keys. It pisses me off.
But it's tricky to makes it interesting, especially if you're playing by yourself. Um,
Yeah.
and let's go back to Slap. I wanna. You mentioned a couple of songs, but what would be the most uh, essential slap-based recordings for you?
Ooh, shit! You should have. I should have prepared that. Um,
Well, you
there's
mentioned Stray Cat Strut. You mentioned Surf Ride to Oblivion, but
Surf Ride to Oblivion. That's definitely one. So definitely, I think I See Red by Frenzy. I think also, what was that one song by Ricochets? Because I think Sam Sardi, but from the Ricochets, was probably even slightly before Steve Whitehouse as being the first guy who did the super fast slap. I mean, there's some stuff
Oh, I'm
like,
not
I mean,
sure. Like did Steve play with
Kids and
the
the Sharks.
Sharks? That was he playing like a crazy triplets? I mean, faster triplets.
You see, I don't really know the Sharks too well. I know someone said that the Ricochets were probably slightly before Frenzy, and Ricochets they always had the really fast psychobilly slapping. I think so. Nobody's Business by Frenzy. I See Red by Frenzy. There's so many great slap bass recordings that's coming out of your part of the world on the West Coast that came out in the 2000s. What was that band called? Mad Marge and the Stone Cutters, I think.
Oh yeah.
Mentally Ill. I mean, great bass playing on that. A good singer too.
Are they
Daniel's
from Canada?
Resurrects. I mean, sort of some of the Resurrect stuff, which is off a lot of it is our mate Toma and Michael. I mean, some of that bass playing on there is just superb. It's super tight in the pocket. Anything by the Fish Tank Ensemble, and I'm trying to think of like old stuff. I always kind of liked "Lonesome Tears in My Eyes," the Johnny Burnett song, which has the sort of rumba thing. That has that. Rock Therapy. I'm not even sure if he's actually doing triplets, but it sounds like it's triplets, So he does. Hang on a second. Well, I don't need a doctor. I don't need a nurse. Anytime, any pill you give me, babe, will only make me worse. I need rock therapy. Now, I'm not even sure if he's actually playing triplets or if it's just the echo working there, but it kind of sounds like that. And from the old stuff, that first recording of Eddie Cochran's 20 Flight Rock, that's some nice slap bass playing there. Ugly and Slouchy by the Maddox Brothers, because that's something like that's just super fast back in the day. and it's something like, ugly and slouchy, that's the way I like them. It's one of those great Maddox Brothers Western swing type things, which is really fun. Yeah.
Maddox products were definitely cool. I like some of those cuts that they
They had
did.
but the story behind him is I think that their father was a proper Okie, so he was sort of had been through the Dust Bowl and all those depression years in the Midwest, and he kind of said he just decided, damn, this can't be all there is to life, working yourself to the bone and then you lose everything. Life has got to be better than that, and so he just insisted that all his kids learn a musical instrument. He says, I don't want you to have to do this work that I have had to do. I want you to play music. So you're going to have to learn an instrument. And they did. And they were the Maddox Brothers and Rose. And hard-working band. Pretty, pretty cool.
We have a couple more questions. Well, Thomas is correcting us. He said
Oh, man.
Mad March was from Victorville, California.
Okay.
Um,
Do you use KK? What's
Nikki,
KK? That sounds like a Nazi organization.
KK pickup
Oh, KK pickup.
preamp.
No, I use these custom-made Bartolinis. Is that a Piazza system, KK?
I think that he's because he was talking about the preamp,
Oh, that preamp that everyone seems to like that has two mini
the,
jacks.
the
I
one that
used
you're
one of those
using two
on
knobs.
tour in Spain. I was given a bass that had a shallow magnetic pickup, which I know well because I used to use that one. The shallow magnetic pickup. It had the same strings as mine, Prestos, and then it had that K and K preamp, and that was kind of cool. I mean, I don't like the idea of having a little machine that has a battery in which is fiddly, although I kind of have that for the slap. But that worked fine. I also like the fact that it had a mute button and you can tune. That was pretty cool. Um,
All right, guys. I think that we're close to wrap up. So if you have any questions for Oliver, please do that. Ask that now.
no, I won't
Uh,
take my clothes off.
what I say?
No, I won't take my clothes off.
uh, Veljko said that's actually the guy that I mentioned that I was looking when I was a kid. He was like one of a couple of bass players, rockabilly bass players
Mhm.
that was playing rockabilly in my hometown, and then
Cool.
quite a few of the tricks I stole from him when I was 12. And he wrote almost forgot about COVID while listening to us.
Good.
So that's the goal of the Slapstream. Let me see if there's anything else. I think that we did all of this. I would like to see where you guys are coming from. So if you can write that down in the live chat. Um,
What do you mean
while
coming
I'm
from?
asking, maybe I have one or two more questions for you. Um, one important one is like I want to know what inspires you to do to still do what you do, because we know that music business, especially nowadays, and then especially rock and roll, is not the most profitable thing, and we
Yeah,
could
it's not
all
earning any
do
money.
something more serious or steady or more responsible or whatever. We all heard
I
those
still, you
stories.
see, I still haven't earned anything off those 18 million views for My Love Forevermore. And I actually wrote that song. It still
No,
hasn't racked up enough to warrant a payout. And I think when I get a payout, it's going to be a couple of thousand, but it's going to be in the lower four digits. It's not going to be a lot. And that goes to, and that's a YouTube hit. Yeah, so it's interesting that only only in Switzerland, where I live, do I get asked the question from press people, why do you play music? And obviously, they're implying exactly what you just said, that surely it's not worth it. And that's obviously a very Swiss way of looking at things. But I mean, the question itself is valid. And the way I see it, it's not like we have a choice, is there? I mean, the music, if you do music, it's kind of what you do, and you can't, you don't have a choice. If you would just say, no, this is not worth it, I quit, you will end up just having an unhappier life. And that's the reason why you play music. Because no, it's not for the, the late nights and the little sleep and spending 7 hours in a van and the pay, which would be better if you just took an office job, etc., etc. It's not for that. It's you do it because you ended up there, and the reason you ended up there is because somehow you had to do that. I don't really know if there's a better way to put it. I just feel that sometimes I don't really have a choice, and it's actually. Guy said we made him forget about COVID. I mean, I'm kind of forgetting about that right now too. But during this lockdown, I did sort of, I didn't play music, and I found it, for various reasons, I found it really difficult to just even pick up a guitar or anything. And as a result, I think I was quite a bit worse for wear. And even just sort of talking about it and showing how rusty I am right now is kind of making it feel way better. And that's kind of why, you see, I'm thinking aloud here. And that's probably why, yeah, that's why we still find, I'm saying we, I'm assuming it's a similar story for you. And that's why we probably still find the motivation to get out there and do that. It's ultimately, we feel better being able to do that. And it's a huge privilege to be able to do that. I mean, that's the thing that a lot of people forget. Every time if I'm out on stage and there's a club full of people who are clapping at the end of a song that I've written, and I'm playing a song and people are grooving to it, I always, every single gig, it sort of just crosses my mind, so, wow, what a privilege. How privileged am I to be able to do this? This is amazing. I'm very, very grateful. So there you go. That's why we still do that.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, I like asking that question, especially now during these times, these weird times or new normal times, when I get that question quite a lot. And I'm like, I really don't feel I have a choice. This is who I am. You can take
Yeah.
anything from me, but if you take that out of me, I'm afraid that there will be nothing left.
Yeah,
But
I mean, and I have, I mean, I have a side job. I mean, that's another, massive privilege of being able to live in Switzerland is that I can have a 50% job, which is a professional job. So I write for a news outlet, and that's a good job, which lets me allocate my spare time in the way I want to, and I can keep up a professional music career. But um, the music part is really, it's just there. It's just not debatable. And when you don't get to do music, like I just did this last half year or something now, it was rough. I just have to get back into that, and it's going to be way better. It's crazy. Another thing is that if you carry on playing music into your old age, I think it's been proven that people who still play music up into their old age are far less likely to, to get dementia and stuff like that, because you're forcing your brain to think. Um, is that laterally? Is that the word I'm looking for? Because I always find music is this amazing combination that very few other things have in our everyday lives. Because you're using both halves of your brain. You're using the whole mathematical, analytical side because you're keeping time. You think about chords, and chords is an abstract way of describing a sound. So there's a sound, and you've written it down as a chord, and it's in writing, and your brain is translating that. So one side of your brain is doing all sorts of computational skills, and the other side is making it sound like music, which means it has to be beautiful, it has to touch someone, it has to make people want to dance. And so you're using both sides of your brain, which are constantly having to connect. And apparently, that's probably the reason why keep playing music, even if you're a great grandfather, because then you at least you won't be demented.
We have Chuck. He wrote, "You don't choose to be a musician; music chooses you." I agree with you,
Chuck,
Chuck.
I think you're right. Thank you, sir.
Uh, all right. One last question from Justin Roth. Hey Oliver, when is the next HME album?
Hmm. I don't know. um,
Anything in the works?
no, because as you know, that's the way I work. Is we plan the album and then I get down to working.
Just just
I'm
schedule it.
if it all. I mean, I I'll say next year because if it all works out, I'm currently. I mean, this has been postponed because of COVID too. If it all works out, I'm going to produce someone's album. I don't want to say it yet because it's obviously not been decided on definitely. But if it all works out, I'm going to produce someone's album who I'm really excited about, and then afterwards I'll have time to getting another Hillbilly Moon album out, which we definitely want to do. I know that if you say something's is in the works, I know that Emanuela already has a couple of songs. She's going to be recording a solo album this year too. I mean, that's another reason we've just got a couple of things to go through. Although, is she going to be recording? Because she's going to be doing it in the States. She's got I don't know if I'm allowed to say it yet, if it's official yet, so I won't. But so she's got everything kind of booked, but she can't travel, can she? You can't get into the States, or I don't know. It's unclear.
Well, I'm currently in Europe and it's nighttime here behind me. I started when it was
So how are you
bright.
going to get back? I mean, are they going to let you back into the States then?
I think they should. They might have. I might need to be in a like to self isolate or something, but I'm not.
Right.
I'm not sure what the
Yeah,
deal
yeah.
is. Um, those things are changing literally every day.
I know.
So,
I was. I mean, I
uh,
was. I'm planning to go and visit London with my daughter in a couple of weeks' time, and I haven't booked yet because I'm sort of. It seems to be changing every day. I'm going to book last minute, and then we're going to decide.
literally everything is changing, and good thing that most of the airplane companies they have a policy of exchanging plane
Mm,
tickets for free. So that's what I'm gonna be doing. So I don't
well,
know,
good
but I
luck.
plan to be back to the Slapsville, California, in a few weeks.
Slapsville, California. Where do you live? Do you live
Yeah,
in LA?
I live in Los Angeles. Yeah,
Right, yeah. So that's Slapsville for you. Okay. What part do you live in?
yeah, a little part of the Los Angeles, the Slapsville,
Good.
Manhattan Beach. It's technically North
Yeah.
Redondo, but it's 1 block from Manhattan Beach, so
Cool.
Redondo is more like more south. So
Yeah.
um,
Okay.
it's
Cool.
a cool
Smashing.
area. I like that area. I used to live in Santa Monica before that. Before that, I was living in Van Nuys, and before that, I was living in San Francisco. But it seems that I'm going, southern and southern and southern. I might end up in Mexico. Who knows?
You'll end up in San
Mexico is
Diego.
one my favorite.
Well, that's one country we haven't played yet. Then that's one country I would love to play because
That's
I
my
know we've
favorite
got
country to play.
lots and lots of fans there. I don't know. Have you played there? Have you? I think you have. You've played with your Balkan
Mexico?
friends. Yeah.
Oh no, wait. Mexico has a really special place in my heart. I play in Mexico usually 3 to 5 times per year.
Yeah. Cool.
And the reason for that, Tiger Army has a really good following over there. So we go once or twice there. Last few years we played.
But do you
Uh,
tour or is it individual festivals?
well, I play. with Tiger Army, we did only not only we did like always our own shows, but in I think that
Yeah.
in Monterey we played a festival
Mm.
um, in Mexico with Tiger Army. But the main band that I play with in Mexico is a Mexican band, Molotov, and they're
Mm.
from Mexico City. And with them, I tour Mexico,
Cool.
and I played I don't know 30, 40 shows with them in Mexico. And it's always
Oh,
great. But they're a really
see,
big band in Mexico.
I think I've never been there yet, but I feel that it's going to have a special place in my heart. I'd love
I
to. So
I
maybe
love it. It's
I'm gonna ask you about your booking agent or something, so we can.
yeah.
Because it's basically, I mean, every time someone writes, most of the questions we get is like, when are you going to come to Australia? When are you going to come to
No.
Argentina? When are you going to come to blah blah blah? And the question is always, well, as soon as someone can put together a workable deal, that's
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
We need to have something. We can't go and search for promoters. Someone has to come along and say, okay, here's a suggestion. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. I would just
Exactly.
really
Yeah.
like to play
I know how it
Mexico.
is. Mexico is great. Mexico is, literally one of my favorite places to travel at. I love the food, I love the people, I don't know, I love everything about Mexico. It's
Yeah,
it's just amazing. You should go.
love to.
Cool, man. I don't think there are like any other questions. Like
Yeah, well, it's been
so,
bloody long, hasn't it? It's been
it's
three
what
hours, dude.
3 hours, man.
It's
All right,
too long. We got to
Elias
wrap.
Hillbilly said like greetings from Mexico.
Yes,
So
thank you.
uh, it says like from Zoran wrote, some of us are shut down as much. It's inspiring to listen to you guys. Thank you. Make another cell phone video. It may mean more than you expect.
Oh, well, thank you, Zoran.
No
You know
worries,
what?
man.
I'll take that to heart. I mean, I
Uh,
was every time. If you have to sort of single out one single reason why you play music, I think the most touching thing that you can get is whenever someone comes up to you and just says, "This song, da da da," or something really touched me because it reminded me of whatever, and then it's some personal experience or some emotional experience, and that for me is always, if anything, that's the reason why you do music. If you can touch people emotionally, that's that's the greatest thing you can do.
it's just amazing. I mean, that doesn't happen, and you kind of like feel responsibility. It's just
Yeah. And so I kind
it's
of forget sometimes that maybe you should just chuck out another video like that because maybe it means more to some people than it actually means to yourself. So yes, Zoran, cheers.
yeah. We all want to be on the stage right now, but this is intimacy now. We are in each other's houses.
Hey man,
This
I
is
mean
yeah.
this
This is it.
is yeah. Hey man, this was really nice. Thank you so much.
Thank
I'm
you for
I'm
doing this.
really honored. And what a nice chat, and what a nice dude you are. Cheers,
Yeah,
man.
thanks, man. You too. 3 hours, 3 hours and 3 minutes.
Bloody
All
hell.
right, man.
He just can't stop yakking once he starts.
Well, I love
Shut up.
talking about bass and slap bass, so it's and rockabilly and all that cool stuff. So we are
Okay.
creating a scene.
So
All right,
I'm gonna run
you got it
away.
right.
Back.
All right, let's finish with this comment. I even didn't read it until the end. Hillbilly Moon Explosion probably is one of the best things that happened to rockabilly since a really long time. Being able to be modern and old school at the same time is fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Woman.
Well, we got
Whatever.
like lots of great,
Thanks so much.
great comments. All right. Thanks again, Oliver. I hope to see you on the stage soon.
Yes, I hope to see
And
you too,
yeah,
and I hope to be in. I mean, if this production thing works out, I will probably be in LA, and that means we are so gonna have a drink together. Okay.
just let me know. I'll be there. Thanks,
Thanks so much.
man.
What do I do now? You switch this off. You're gonna sort it out, right?
I do this. You can stay,
Uh,
but I'll just remove you. But it's
okay.
all good.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for listening in. Thanks so much. I hope it wasn't too boring.
Nah. Oh my God, another one. 3 hours. and all of you stayed here. Thanks a lot. I can't thank you enough. I'm doing this for myself. I'm doing this for my sanity. I'm doing this for all of you, and hopefully you learned something and heard all these cool stories from Oliver and about his bands. And I really appreciate these comments. If you have in mind somebody that you would like me to feature on the Slap stream, please write down in the comments below. Um, and these live chat is great for the comments during the stream, so that we can answer these questions and everything. But like for me, to check and then to actually feature somebody, please write that down below. And if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. Subscribe button should be somewhere around here. And if it's not there yet, you should go to my channel, subscribe. Um, what else should I mention? And yeah, if you would like to support us, please check the Patreon link. Patreon link is also below under the video, and couple donation links. If you like to help me out doing these live streams and to continue doing these live streams, slap streams, there's a PayPal and Venmo link. And of course, make sure to follow Art of Slap Bass primarily. That all the links are below as well. Oliver's links are below. My personal links are below. Check them out. And don't forget, never fret. Slide it in smooth and keep it in a groove. This is Djordje, your friendly neighborhood bullfiddle cat. And I'll see you next Saturday.